Day one of the 2014 NBA Draft Combine, live from Chicago, Quest Multisport. This draft class has been talked about for well over a year, and perhaps one of the deepest classes we've seen in years. Russ Smith, one of the point guards that will get things started early, a great career at Louisville. Some of the other point guards that will be working out today with this first unit. Zach LaVine from UCLA, probably a surprise for some, but getting back to his natural position out of high school, a 6'5" kid we saw shooting around a little bit earlier. And DeAndre Kane of Iowa State, a little bit older, but put up major numbers for his Cyclones this past year with their tournament run.
I just never thought that I could make it to college, NBA, to be an NBA MVP.
We play well against the best in the world, what we all do it for.
It's the ultimate accomplishment for me.
Growing up, I always wanted to be an NBA player.
Curry, head up, looking to push the tempo. Long three, got it! Exploding to the rim. Griffin rolls it down. It's Lillard. He got the shot off. Lillard, good! Durant to drive and throws it down.
Kevin Durant is clearly the MVP.
Whoever team he goes to, he's going to really help them out instantaneously.
Wiggins gathers it in. Look out! Jabari Parker! Oh! Julius, don't sleep on him. Blocked by Embiid. Wow! Gordon, what a finish! Down the lane! Slam it with that hand. That was an NBA play. That guy's a BT beer. He's selling gold.
He has a great future ahead of him, and NBA scouts realize it.
Growing up as a kid, always been my dream playing the NBA.
Live from Quest Multisport in Chicago, it is day one of the NBA Draft Combine, and this is now an exercise that there's a lot of talk about the people that are in attendance here today, guys. Danny Ainge back in the lottery after years of successful playoff runs for the Celtics. Jerry West, the Golden State Warriors, the logo looking for someone to add to that unit that's now made a coaching change. And Mitch Kupchak of the LA Lakers, in a situation of the lottery the Lakers are not used to being in. So be curious to see if he can find his next guy to pair with Kobe Bryant here inside this gym for the next couple days. 5 hours of coverage, 3 hours on ESPNU. Then we'll switch over to ESPN2 for 2 hours a little bit later. We've done this before, guys, for a bunch of years. Chad Ford, almost 20 years in the business, covering the draft. Everybody's favorite, Tom Penn. He's up in the stands. All the executives want to say hi to
Everybody's
Tom.
favorite.
Everybody loves him. Fran Fraschilla, international, coaching these guys in the offseason. Also the Hoop Summit, and, of course, two-time Player of the Year at Duke. It's Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo. We'll be hosting this stuff for you guys today. And looking at these 2 days, this is what you need to understand about the process. 2-day event today and tomorrow, as we mentioned, 5 hours of coverage. 60 players have been invited to participate. Players will perform in skills, workouts, strength, agility training, a lot of timed events. That's where you start to wonder, okay, is this guy that athletic on tape? Some guys surprise us, some guys disappoint. Last year, 21 of the 30 players picked in the first round participated here at the Combine in Chicago. Let's go back to a couple years ago, guys. We were all sitting together on this desk, and you actually can really make a name for yourself at this event. Damian Lillard out of Weber State, a guy who wasn't recruited big time out of high school. You started to hear a little bit of buzz about him before the Combine. He put on an absolute show, and now is one of the best young point guards in the NBA and sealing off a nice playoff run with that game winner against Houston in Game 6. Again, eliminated last night, but Lillard's somebody you can build around. And Jay, when you start to look at this first group, we want to focus on your guys, the point guards. It's deep, it has a lot of size. Who are you looking at specifically?
Well, to show some West Coast love here, guys, a guy named Zach LaVine, who's 6'5", I think is one of the most athletic players in the entire draft, and he's a hidden gem in this draft as well. A lot of people, when he first came into UCLA, he was coming off the bench. His natural position in high school was the PG spot, but coming off the bench playing behind Kyle Anderson, I think there were tendencies at times to rush the play and forced action. But there's no doubt about it, he has exceptional skill. He has an understanding of the game. His play slacked off a little bit towards the end of the season, Fran. But when you look at his skill set, this is one of these guys that when you put him in drill situations and you get a chance to see that height, that size, that length, that wingspan, that athleticism, I think his stock is going to be on the rise.
Well, and especially because he'll be one of the youngest players taken in the first round. And once you get past the obvious top 5 or 6 picks, a team is going to see a Zach LaVine and say, look, great athlete. He already showed what he can do athletically. We're willing to take a chance on him. He may not be ready to step into an NBA lineup next year because he's still very physically immature, but a terrific talent down the road.
Now, part of this process, after guys like Zach work out for everybody, there's a lot of team interviews too, Fran, and that might be the first part of the whole evaluation.
Well, I agree, Ryan. You know what? We've been patting these guys on the back as college players during the season, but now this becomes where it's a business. It's a job interview, and while the combine might be only 10% of the job interview, teams are going to see guys here. They're going to interview them. They're going to get their medicals, get to know them a little bit more than they did during the season. And you know what? We'll rip them apart a little bit the next couple of days because it is a job interview. And you know I'm good at that, Tom.
You're going to do it. You will. Tom, but you've sat up in those stands. You've sat there with your entire staff. When you go through the process of these 2 days, like how important is it for the guys actually that will be working out on the court, going through the drills, their chance to impress some of the decision makers?
What an opportunity. If you do choose to participate, this room is like the best room in basketball. We saw some of the executives that are here. You go down the list, every major executive is here, plus the head coaches. Those are the decision makers when it comes to decide who to draft and in what position. So all these kids who choose to be here can capture somebody's eye, can start the process. We all remember when we fell in love the first time. You can fall in love with that player starting here.
I know we're all kind of laughing about getting ready to critique some of the players that won't be here. A few of those are in Chad Ford's top 10 for his mock draft that's up on ESPN.com right now. Chad, we know how long we've talked about these guys. We've talked to GMs. I don't know if they're torn apart more now. We're going to spend a lot of time on these names despite not being in attendance in the drills. But what can you tell us about how fluid the top is?
Well, speaking of in love, I'm in love with this draft. I mean, compared to last year, there's so much talent in this draft, and I think general managers and scouts, they're really excited. A lot of these guys, unfortunately, aren't going to play here. Wiggins, Parker, and Embiid are not going to go through the drills and the medical testing and the athletic testing, but we're excited to be able to see guys like Adante Exum, for example, out of Australia, a guy that many general managers, if they've seen him play at all, they've seen him play once, and just to see him out here with the other guys doing athletic testing, doing measurements, things like that, this is a chance to see all of these players on the same court together and start to measure them up. This is the start of the draft process, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, Exum certainly with this point guard group, somebody that would impress if he was taking part in the drills. We really knew that that wasn't going to happen. But here's how it's going to work out. Group 1 is going to get started right behind us. The point guards are going to go through ball handling drills, decision making in the fast breaks. Let's listen in right now to Scott Layton leading this group to start it off.
Here we go. We got hard work on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hard work.
Far corner to the left.
Here we go.
We got Burton, Carson, Kristen, Clarkson, Kraft.
Is this okay? Too early?
We're going to focus in now on Russ Smith. He'll be number 11 today at the Combine with the point guards. And somebody that falls more into that prospect group. Well, really not the prospect group, but somebody that you kind of know what you're getting if you're bringing them out of Louisville, which always ends up being the debate a little bit later in the first round. Do you take a flyer on somebody, or do you add somebody who you already know is kind of a finished product, Jay?
It's going to be interesting with Russ, and I'm a Russ Dickless fan. I think he was an exceptional college basketball player. I think deciding to stay for another year was a good decision on his behalf. You saw a little bit more of his point guard skills. He made some people around him better. You know, a lot of people question his height, but with some of the new rules of the NBA, we've seen smaller players be able to take advantage of their quickness and their speed. You know, the question for him is, will he be able to fit into a team at the right position? And it needs to be a good fit. A lot of people talk about, hey, he should be drafted in the first round, but it's also about the right fit for the right team for a guy like Russ to make an impact.
I think he's a specialist, Jay. He's a guy that wasn't heavily recruited coming to Louisville. A lot of people didn't really know much about him nationally. He had a really good senior year, shot 40% almost from 3. To me, guys, he's one of those guys, a third point guard on your team. I think he's one of the quickest guys in college basketball. Gets to the foul line a lot, and he's an acquired taste. There may be a team that sees him as a guy you can throw in a game, get things going a little bit, but small guards traditionally have trouble. But this guy's a proven winner. Who knows?
He's a pace changer, right? That's what you're talking about. Change that pace. Bring in a small who's going to get you quicker. We see a lot of small ball, and that's smaller at every position, quicker at every position. Guys like Russ Smith are good off the bench, particularly if they can find that niche, find that space. Jay, you remember how small that court gets when you get to the NBA level. and the clever ones find their space. Think of Nate Robinson. Think of these guys who can, in transition or in the half court, know where they can get their space and then attack.
And Tom, the only reason I say the right fit, think about somebody like Norris Cole. Norris Cole was a great scorer coming out of Cleveland State, but he got the right fit with Miami. And if Russ can get into a fit of a situation like that, that's where I think Russ Smith could be a special player if he has the right kind of guidance and leadership over him.
It's really interesting because he wanted to come out of the draft after his junior year. Was an incredible college basketball player, but this sometimes means that college basketball stats don't translate to the NBA. Yep. NBA scouts looked at him and said, he's a 6'2" guard who is shot happy, right? He doesn't take a lot of great shots. Rick Pitino pulling his hair out a lot over the shots that Russ Smith would take. He made a great decision coming back because he got under control. He started to pass the ball more. He doubled his assist total. He improved his three-point shooting, not because he couldn't shoot three-pointers, but he started taking better shots within the offense, and I think he helped himself. I'm not sure that he's a first-rounder in this draft, but he might be, and because of his speed, because of his ability to score off the bench, and because he showed that he could play within a system a little bit more and wasn't as wild as we saw him his first couple of years at Louisville, this is an example of a young man who made a good decision to come back to college, improve on his weaknesses, and now he's got a chance of being drafted in the first round. I'm not sure he'll be, but now he's got a chance.
He's a byproduct of his system as well now, because let's remember, Louisville needed him to score a lot of points. And I think at times when he played with Peyton Siva 2 years ago, Peyton Siva wasn't a great scorer. Russ needed to take on the same challenge. You saw Terry Rozier, some other guys step up at that point guard position. But Russ Smith needed to score, but showing the ability to make plays around him are things I think will translate to the NBA level.
We always point out this on the measurables here for height, and it confuses some people, but it's always important. The NBA heights you see listed on NBA.com, ESPN.com, that is with shoes. So you really always want to go by that top height. He's just under 6'1", which is interesting with this group because there's some 6'5", 6'6" guys out there working with this point guard group that may not really even be point guards, and Russ kind of fits into that. Is he the one? Is he the two? But against some of the guys with size, be curious how that plays out the next couple days.
The one thing you know about Russ Smith, he's going to go into any NBA camp next year and be very, very confident. This guy believes he's an NBA player. I saw him late in the year at SMU hit 6 straight threes in the second half in a big win over the Mustangs. And I had lunch with Larry Brown a couple weeks ago. We were going over a lot of the guys that he's played against this year, and he said to me, I think Russ Smith can play in the league, but it gets back to what Tommy said. You got to be in the right place, right time, and you got to have a coach that believes in your skill.
Another part of our coverage here, Andy Katz working the room with interviews throughout the next 2 days.
Well, prior to that, before we even got here, we looked at maybe polling about half the league. We tried to get the full league, just sort of see who they wanted to see here in the comment. Of course, a lot of players they wanted to see aren't participating, but we also asked a couple of different questions about who they thought would be the lottery sleepers going into this draft, and Zach LaVine was number 1. Getting a couple of votes for that. It became sort of the consensus guy that they think that he could climb into the lottery. TJ Warren from NC State and Rodney Hood, who we will see over the next couple of days, is a potential lottery sleeper from Duke. Another question that we asked are 3 players who basically need to do a lot of work on these workouts to prove a little bit more. One of those players that we will see over the next 2 days, Glenn Robinson III from Michigan, had a bit of an inconsistent career with the Wolverines, so NBA personnel really want to see what he can do. Mitch McGary, a teammate of his, if he's healthy to do even anything when he gets to that individual team workouts, wasn't originally going to project into this NBA draft. Now that he's in, teams want to see how he'll perform when they get to that individual team workout. And Kyle Anderson, certainly an intriguing prospect, has a left ankle injury. Spoke with him earlier this morning. He will not participate in the next 2 days. He says he's going to be back at it on Monday. He had that high ankle sprain out for the last 3 weeks, but they want to see him play as a playmaker, certainly, because that's what his role was at UCLA.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And let's look in now at Zach LaVine coming out of UCLA. This was a bit of a surprise that he declared because Zach, really another guy that played out of position, Chad, and this is kind of something you need to know a little bit more about him because he's out there with the point guards, and I know some of the scouts I've talked to are almost confused that he's with this group.
I guess because he played in Seattle, and maybe because in high school he played in Seattle. He was a point guard in high school, and he came out to UCLA, but Steve Alford comes as the coach, brings his son from New Mexico, and suddenly his son is the backup point guard now. LaVine moves to the 2, and but when you watched him early in the season, a couple things stand out. You're always looking for NBA skills, and he's got two. He's an elite athlete, first of all. I mean, he can really jump out of the gym. Two, he has unlimited range on his jump shot. This guy can shoot it. He's got a super quick release. He can shoot it off the bounce. He can shoot from anywhere on the floor. Now, if you add the thing that scouts didn't get to see, the fact that he's a 6'5" point guard on top of that, this is the type of guy that you talk about as a top 10 pick in the draft. He was inconsistent at UCLA. At times he was forcing the issue because I think with his limited minutes, he wanted to show things. And you look at his size right there with shoes, almost 6'6", that 6'8" wingspan. That's a big deal for NBA scouts. Even as a two guard, that's a good size for a two guard, let alone as a point guard. He's the wild card in the draft because he's not ready. You can see physically he needs to add weight and he needs to add strength. He needs to add discipline. But he's the type of guy that has those three skills that translate at the NBA level. If he figures it out, he can be one of the best players in this draft.
I think when you talk about this guy, Chad, you know, the NBA has changed so much. There's really no such thing. There are very few pure point guards, Tom. These guys now are multi-skilled. You think of the Steph Currys, the Russell Westbrooks. This guy, once you get past to the sure things, the first 6, 7, 8, 9 guys, if you're a team, you're looking at his elite athleticism and say, we're going to have to work with him from day one. We're going to have to get him stronger. He's going to spend time in the D-League. There's no question about it. But it's really hard to find a guy who's the 8th youngest guy in this draft with this kind of athleticism. There were times at UCLA where he did struggle late in the year. But pure athletic ability and skill level, teams are going to be intrigued in the middle of the round.
So if I'm an NBA head coach, I haven't seen college basketball. I'm so focused on my team. I come to this event and I sit next to you guys, my scouting crew, and you say to me what you just said: size, shooting, athleticism, young, can grow. And I say, that's what I want. Like I'm looking right now. Jay, you know it, size matters here. Yep. With the in the backcourt. This kind of physical size with those capabilities is coveted by NBA teams. And oh, by the way, Michael Carter Williams, anybody? I mean, you think of what just succeeded last year, this year, and you see this sort of similar body type.
You know, I've had so many people from the time the college basketball season ended till this day have asked me, hey, is player X ready? Is player B ready? Are all these players ready to make an impact in the NBA? I don't know a lot of drafts where there are a lot of players who are able to come in and make an impact right away. Last year, there were only a couple. I think this year there will be more.
I don't even know if I like the question anymore. Like, you shouldn't be dismissing any of these players. Like, when somebody says, is he ready, 90% of the time you're just going to say no, so why are we even asking?
It's a projection, right? That we're projecting what his future talent could be. And when you look at all these, you know, tangibles, these attributes that he brings to the table with that size, with that length, with that athletic ability, his ability to shoot the ball from deep. He was a point guard in high school. There's no doubt about it. His stock is going to be on the rise.
Well, he's a piece of clay to these teams because you can mold this guy any way you want over the next 2 to 4 years that you got him under contract. His time and score decision-making during the season was abysmal, but you're talking about a young guy. You're talking about a guy that you're going to take, train him, work with him skill-wise, the Kenny Atkinses of the world that are out here behind me. And then also, I think he is going to spend time playing in the D-League because he needs that playing time.
What range is he in right now, Chad?
10 to 20. And the other thing, this is probably the best prospect that we're going to see out here today. There's guys that are going to get drafted a lot lower than him that decided not to participate in this combine. I think this was a decision by his agents to let him get out here with the point guards, let teams see him in this setting. And he's a confident young man. If you watch him at UCLA, one thing you'll know is he has no hesitation letting the ball fly. And I think teams are going to like what they see, just the fact that he showed up here. I think he's going to help his draft stock.
It's a great point because there's so many guys that have dropped that don't want to do the drills. You figure somebody has to benefit from them. Maybe it's Zach LaVine. We'll spend some more time on him throughout the entire day. We'll also get back to the rest of the point guards. Speaking of experience, DeAndre Kane out of Iowa State, and also going to hear from Marcus Smart, one of the point guards not working out, and get you all caught up on who is actually here doing the drills. Live from Chicago, it is day one. We're kicking
2014 NBA Draft Combine is brought to you by USAA, proudly serving the financial needs of current and former military members and their families.
Marcus Smart, coach, is a difference maker. Alley-oop underneath. Marcus Smart with a slam. He's
taking the ball to the basket. He's defending at a high level. That's the way he needs to play.
Mark with a 1-on-2 layup. Good. And Smart's going to pull up, let it fly, and knock it down. Marcus Smart.
Some highlights from Marcus Smart. It's 2 years at Oklahoma State, according to Chad Ford. You can check this out on his big board on ESPN.com. The top 5 point guards in this class: Dante Exum, the Australian mystery man, not here in attendance, but Marcus Smart sitting there at number 2. He's not going to go through the drills, but he's with our Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, if you're not going to do the drills, of course you got to come over here to our interview station. And Marcus, a year ago, you easily could have gone in the NBA draft, and a lot of these personnel were surprised that you did not. Why did you come back for your sophomore season?
You know, it was my freshman year. It was my first year ever playing point guard as a true point guard. That was my primary position. So, you know, I wanted to embrace being a point guard, and I'm a student in the game. I wanted to learn more about it, the point guard position, you know, to make sure that I fully understood and mentally ready to play the point guard position the next level.
You had a very interesting season. You had the suspension, the incident with the fan at Texas Tech, the anger, you know, when I think you were playing West Virginia in that game. When you go through the interview process and you're asked about those anger moments during the course of the season, how are you going to answer those questions?
You know, like I've been answering, you know, those things in the past, you know, understand that's not the way I'm supposed to react to things, you know, but I'm a competitor. My competitive nature took over a little bit. And, you know, those are life lessons and, you know, building blocks that I built on, and it prepared me for what's coming for me in the future.
How would you describe your passion for the game and the way it's exhibited on the court?
You know, you can see it just the way I play, you know. There's no one, I've never had a coach ever question my competitiveness or my motor, you know. I'm always out there competing, no matter if we're down 20 or we're up 20, I'm always competing. So, you know, you can see it out there on the court that I'm always competing.
You're not a traditional point guard, so if a team is drafting you high in the lottery, what kind of playmaker are they getting?
Essential one, you know. I can do multiple things. Like you said, I'm not a you know, traditional point guard. So, you know, that makes me unique because you can't play me as a traditional point guard. I do other things as well, too. So, you know, it kind of keeps defenders on their toes.
Appreciate it, Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Andy Katz with Marcus Smart. So, Chad, when we look at Marcus, we know last year he easily could have been that top 5 pick. That had more to do with the lack of depth probably in that draft class versus this year. But where are scouts with him as a player and really as a personality for next year's team?
I think he would have been a number 2 pick in the draft. I think the Orlando Magic wanted to select him with the 2nd pick. They wanted a point guard. So he's not going to go in the top 3 or 4 in this draft. He went back for all the right reasons. He wanted to improve. He wanted to improve his playmaking skills. He wanted to improve his jump shot. And he had some success with that. He got a little bit better, but he shot about 30% from 3 this year instead of 22% from 3. His turnovers went down a little bit. His assists stayed about the same. And he took a ding on his reputation. I mean, before this season, everybody thought Marcus Smart, the most coachable guy, a guy that just everyone raved about playing with, coaching him. And then obviously, you know, Oklahoma State didn't win this year. With that said, NBA teams, most general managers love this guy. They look at the physical size and strength that he has. They look at his competitiveness. They look at his leadership capabilities. There are some guys out here that don't like him. They think that he's not athletic enough. They think that he's not a pure point guard. But generally, I think he's going to be the number 2 point guard in the draft taken after Dante Exum. I just don't see Tyler Ennis or Zach LaVine or Elfrid Payton or someone jumping ahead of Marcus Smart, and I think he goes in the top 10. So it wasn't a disastrous decision for him by any stretch of the imagination, and he got better.
Fran, what do you think?
The guy just turned 20 years old. He's built like a freight train. I've been watching him a long time. Remember this. He went to the NBA senior national team's Olympic team last summer that Mike Krzyzewski coaches. He and Doug McDermott were the only 2 college players there. He more than held his own. Overall in his career, he shot 75% from the line. He has a tendency to try to do too much with his scoring, but he's a gifted passer. He has the best IQ of anybody in this draft, in my opinion, both offensively and defensively. He is a competitor. Let's take a look now what we're talking about. You talk about his defensive ability. He's 6'4". He can guard multiple positions. No one is going to post him up in the point, I can tell you that. Watch him hold his ground, block shots, does a lot of little things. His steal rate is high. By the way, I'm not totally into the analytics, but he blows the analytical charts. He's off the charts when it comes to that. The eye test is he is going to be super competitive. He's going to make whatever team he goes to, he's never going to take a day off in practice. He's going to make your team better.
But one of the guys he went up against in the Big 12 this year with some age, I don't know if you call them issues, but it's certainly a question. It's DeAndre Kane, I was saying. The reason I bring that up, on June 10th, guys, he's going to turn 25 years old. I thought he was terrific this year. You expected that maturity. He'd had some issues, transferred over from Marshall, but his 1 year with Hoiberg, this was a guy that was part of a really good team that could have gone even deeper had they not had a big injury to Niang up front with that foot problem.
You know, he easily could have been the Big 12 Player of the Year. The best thing about him is that he's an old school type player. He can rebound, he can pass. His outside shooting improved under Fred Hoiberg. He's a tough guy. The hardest thing about taking him in the first round, I think he's going to be a second-round pick, is that there is no upside because of the age, Tom.
No upside, but with both of these guys, Marcus Smart, DeAndre Kane, to your point earlier, Ryan, are any of them ready? These two are ready.
I hope he's ready.
They're physically ready. The point is they're physically rugged enough to handle this league and to contribute. Now, Kane, because he's 25, but you see the physical size, the strength, the ability to play 82 games, versatile game, attack the rim, shoot the ball. That's what coaches are looking for, is somebody that can help them win a game in the first week of the season, who can crack my rotation, who can fill my void. With either of those players, they're ready. With Marcus Smart, you're talking high lottery ready with upside. Now you get into the character issues there, you get into the questions. That's part of this whole process. Going back to his interview, Marcus Smart's interview, how'd you feel about that? How did you react to that? You know you're going to have that same question eyeball to eyeball with him back at the hotel or when he comes and visits you. And back to Kane, with him, what you're going to get is maturity of a 25-year-old, and that's going to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah, Kane, I mean, there's no disputing those numbers. 17 points a game, 7 boards, 6 assists, 40% from 3. So there's a lot to like there, and maybe a team will just say, hey, we know he's a rotation guy right away. Somebody else that I'm sure NBA scouts are talking about plugging right into maybe their 8 or 10-man rotation just won a national championship this past year. Shabazz Napier, the point guard of UConn, with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Shabazz, you chose not to participate here, in large part because everyone knows your game. When I interviewed a number of different NBA personnel, they said they know what to expect with you. What do you think you showed over the last 2 seasons that can translate to the NBA?
You know, the biggest thing I think I showed is my leadership. You know, that was in question a lot of times. My improvement, my growth over my 4 years at the University of Connecticut.
It's been quite a month since you guys cut down the nets in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. What's been the highlight?
The highlight is actually getting my degree. I just got my degree Saturday, so that was the biggest highlight of them all.
See, and I thought you were going to say throwing out that first pitch at Fenway Park as a fellow Bostonian. Come on, that had to be pretty high for you.
Yeah, it definitely was, you know, but, you know, it's something I've been working for 4 years, and it was definitely good to have my mother there with me grabbing my degree.
You won a national championship as a freshman and then again as a senior. Being a leader at the point guard position, whether it's in college and NBA, obviously is maybe the most important aspect. So when you get to that interview process, how are you going to answer some of these questions about why you have become such a quality leader?
You know, it's all about being honest. Most of the time they already know the answer. They're going to question a lot of things because, you know, at times I was young. You know, sophomore and my freshman year, but you know, they've seen my growth. You know, I made a lot of mistakes when freshman and sophomore, but I understood that to be a great leader, you have to, you know, learn from the mistakes. You know, in life you're gonna have ups and downs, but you gotta learn from it. I think I did that well my junior year, and I think I did that real well my senior year. You know, I think the team that I was on my senior year, no one believed that we could ever, you know, win a national championship. But it took a lot of hard work, and you know, I'm not the guy to take all the credit for it because I think every single person on my team definitely has the reason why we won. So, but my leadership skills definitely has improved.
2 years ago, you guys were banned from the postseason. You could have bailed. You could have tried to enter the NBA. You decided to return. What does that show about your character?
I mean, I'm a loyal guy. You know, I didn't want, you know, I didn't want that to show it. Show that just because I stayed, I'm loyal. I've always been loyal. I felt like, you know, if someone's gonna stick it out with me, I'm gonna stick it out with them. You know, through the good times and the bad times. And sometimes you need guys like that in life. And you know, I just want to stay and work my tail off to better the University of Connecticut and better myself. And I think I did that.
there are a number of GMs in this room that I think would like to hire your coach, Kevin Ollie, negotiating with UConn right now to potentially stay, but there are teams that are interested in him. Why do you think these NBA teams want to hire Kevin Ollie?
He's a great coach. You know, he's a great coach. He's a great person that is going to push you and believe in you. And when you got someone like that in your corner, that's going to, you know, not only encourage the players, but encourages the staff. And, you know, I don't think the biggest thing I always heard is that a lot of guys said they haven't heard one bad thing about the guy, and it's honestly true. He's a great guy. He's a great competitor, and he knows his stuff. You know, he didn't just walk in and it was granted a good team. No, he knows his stuff. He works on his craft, and you know, there's been late hours that he didn't go to bed. So you know, I think he's a great coach, and you know, everyone sees it.
What's your prediction? Where's he going to be coaching in the fall?
University of Connecticut. I mean, I hope, but you know, he's his own man. So,
thanks, Shabazz.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to you, Ryan.
You know, when I look at Shabazz Napier, he has improved his stock, Ryan, and he is a student of the game. He studies the game every single second that he gets a chance to, and Kevin Ollie, I think, has really helped him in that capacity. And he's so cerebral on the court. He makes great basketball decisions. It's something that we've seen him improve at from one year to the next. And we're going to do a little breakdown tape about why I think Shabazz Napier will translate well to the next level. You're seeing him at the top of the key right now. It's going to be a little flare screen right into a quick ball screen, and he makes a read on a defender. Yogi Ferrell is standing straight up, and the defender does not come out. He doesn't hedge on the ball screen. Shabazz Napier is really able to change angles quickly, stop on the dime, pull up for the mid-range jump shot. Let's go to another ball play, another ball screen here. There's an ISO. All right, the defender's not forcing him one direction. He's providing space. When you allow that space to be on the court, Shabazz Napier has a hesitation move and an isolated set. He has daggers with different moves. He's able to get by you once again, stopping on a dime for another mid-range pull-up jump shot. Now in transition, just being able to draw fouls. A lot of players in the NBA are good at drawing fouls, and for Shabazz Napier, he gets the guy up in the air, draws a foul, goes to the free throw line. Once again, you're going to see a head fake, a step back, and the ability to make plays in the air. He has this innate ability to make people around him better, and that's what makes Shabazz Napier a very talented point guard.
All right, you'll have more from the NBA Draft Combine here from the Quest Multisport in a moment. We got the point guards on the floor, plenty of interviews to come. Stay with us. Draft Combine here in Chicago, Illinois at the Quest Multisport. The point guards have been on the floor. One of those point guards, Arizona State's Jahi Carson, certainly one of the more electrifying point guards out west. Here's Jay Williams on Carson.
You know, guys, when we think about Jahi Carson, I love his explosiveness. I think his decision-making has become a little bit better, Fran, than what it was last year, but you got a chance to spend some time with him with USA Basketball. What are your thoughts?
Well, and I coached him last summer at Adidas Nations Camp out in Long Beach, and he was my point guard. And tough kid. He played on that under-19 team a couple years ago. He's an older sophomore because he had to redshirt. Biggest thing with Jahi Carson is going to be his decision-making in terms of pick-and-roll reads, getting the ball to his teammates. He's so good end-to-end, so strong at getting to the rim that he tends sometimes to try to do a little too much. He's in a development stage. He played for 2 NBA coaches at Arizona State in Eric Musselman and Larry Greer, Tom. So that pick-and-roll acumen is good, but it's got to get better. And again, being a small guard is going to be problematic early for him. But we've seen guys like C.J. Watson, DJ Augustine that have made that transition. Same thing's got to happen here with this young guy.
Well, having that NBA coaching is important. Eric Musselman, Larry Greer, I mean, those are good NBA X and O's. They're getting day in and day out. That subtlety, training in the subtleties of the NBA game, critically important. He's in that bucket of can he translate? I mean, when you're that size in the NBA, you've got to be able to demonstrate you can come in and score the ball right away off the bench.
Hey, Chad, is he a good enough playmaker to run the point guard position on the next level?
I think that's the question, right? Because he's measured here 5'10", so he's really undersized for his position. But maybe Nate Robinson's the sort of player that you look at as a guy like Carson, right? He's explosive athletically. He obviously has an NBA body. He can get up and down the floor. He improved his jump shot this year, especially his three-point shot dramatically, moved from 32% to 39%. But it's a huge uphill battle for someone like this, right? Because he's not a pure point guard. He's going to have to make that transition. He's probably a second-round pick. And his decision to come out now, I think, had a lot to do with his age. Because he's already 21 years old, that's the threshold. You know, NBA guys see 22 or older, and they immediately start to you're an old man at that point, right? So he's 21. He's trying to capitalize on upside. I think coming out of this summer, a lot of guys thought he might be a first-round pick. I don't think he did enough this season to really convince him of that. He's going to have great workouts.
Biggest thing for him, if I'm him, when he does get drafted in the second round, if he does, is learn the NBA game, as Tom and I were talking about. He's been around NBA people. He's not going to score at the NBA level like he did at Arizona State. He's got to be a facilitator-type player and an energizer guy, a ball hawk, a guy that can come in for 8 minutes and a half and give you energy.
Fran, I don't think anybody could have said that better. And I think that's the biggest challenge for guards like Jahi Carson on the next level. The willingness to understand what my strength was in college may not necessarily be what my strength is on the next level. And if he could be a playmaker and make people better, get his foot in the door, then that could potentially provide him with time to show his other skill set.
Speaking of energy, got number 7 from Ohio State. Aaron Craft is out there with the point guards, and exactly like you guys talked about, that energy off the bench, that's certainly what Craft is looking like. No one's talking about him as a potential first-rounder. I don't know if the offense ever really developed, Jay, at Ohio State, but can he fit that kind of role, a bench unit in the league?
100%. I don't think he'll be a first-rounder, but I will be shocked if Aaron Craft is not on the NBA team next year, and for this purpose. And Tom, I think you can appreciate this from a GM perspective. Fran, you can appreciate this from a coaching perspective. When you have a player that every single day shows up early, stays late, at the point guard position, will study the playbook, will not make mistakes, and will also pressure the ball the full length of the court, get his guy to be turned 3 or 4 times before he hits a half-court mark. There's something to be said about the willingness and effort of a player like Aaron Craft. It has to be the right fit, but I think he's a guy that can work his way onto a roster.
Collegiate enthusiasm, right? That's energy. And you love players that can bring you energy day in, day out, regardless of the circumstance. They just show up ready to go. Steve Blake's a great example. Steve Blake played with us in Portland. Even 10 years into his career, he still plays with that collegiate enthusiasm, sort of that edge, that zest. And Craft strikes me as that kind of immediate addition to your locker room, to your practices. I'm not sure when he gets on the court, that'd be a circumstantial thing, but having him in the mix, you can't go wrong.
Look, motor's a tool, and he has a motor, and we know he defends. And at 2.5 steals per game, we know that he can defend. He can't shoot.
No, the shooting got worse, Chet. I mean, they actually wanted him to shoot more his junior year, and then he decided it's almost regressed. So, I mean, I'm wondering if he can score at all, if anybody sees him that way.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge when you have a guy that doesn't have elite physical tools, doesn't have elite size. He plays really, really hard, and we know that. But is that enough to make an NBA roster? And I know a lot of guys like him because he is such a great young man and because he plays so hard and he's a winner. But I think he's there because he played at Ohio State and he did those things. He wouldn't be at this combine for any other basketball reason than that.
When we look at spot-up shooting, you must understand just how important this is in the NBA game, because that ball will find you. They will double off of you and leave a player like Craft open. So this is a critical skill that gets measured both in numbers, as you've alluded to, Ryan, over the year, but also just in mechanics. Does it look fixable?
And I also think the difference here in this drill, which is actually really great, where they start you at the college line and then extend you back to the NBA line. And that may not seem like a big deal, but for those kids that are really comfortable just glued to that college line, they can look really uncomfortable in a real hurry just a few feet back.
Hey, guys, I'm not saying Aaron Craft is going to play 15 to 20 minutes every single night, but can he make a roster? The roster as a third PG?
He can.
100%.
Hey, this is exactly the guy we talked about at the top, where we pat him on the back for an incredible college career at Ohio State. He embodied everything that you want in a college athlete. He was a tremendous player. But you're looking at low pick and roll offensive percentages, points per possession, poor shooter, all those things we know about. He'll be 23 this year. But, Tom, you know this. When you're trying to sign your top guys, when Indiana Pacers have to figure out how much to pay Lance Stevenson, and they're going to have a minimum contract guy as your 12th, 13th man, there's always that chance that you go, you know what, let's keep this guy around for at least the first part of the season, because we know what we're going to get from him in terms of energy and effort every day.
No question. End of that bench, you want crafty veterans who understand their role and are comfortable, and you want youth that's going to bring energy every day. This kid Kraft is the latter.
Now, Tom, how about a guy like, now Darrell Armstrong shot the ball a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than playing against a point guard on an opposing team where you catch the ball after you inbound it and you see a guy salivating right in you. It makes you work a good 6 or 7 seconds to get the ball down the court, and then you're starting your offensive possession in your half-court set with 18 seconds left on the shot clock.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we saw Shabazz Napier earlier, guys. Remember his freshman year when Kemba Walker was the main guy? He was a ball hog who now has become a floor leader and a floor general and a high skill guy. So, you know, all things being equal, a guy like Shabazz Napier is going to have great value, because when you do go under those ball screens, he's going to make you pay at a rate of over 40% behind the arc.
We're going to stay with the point guards in this group. Again, after the college three-point attempts, 25 shots there. Kraft, pretty good numbers. They moved them out to the NBA. We're going to look at him now from that NBA range. And this is something clearly all the guys know. The agents know, hey, you're going to be asked to extend that out to the NBA range. It's just looking back on it and looking at the group of 60 guys coming into this combine, so few of them really look comfortable. Really, you wouldn't want that shot in college where you're going, hey, show off that you can go 4 or 5 feet behind the college line. But this is where it's going to stand out, and Kraft's going to have to show this shot because, as you guys mentioned, defensively, somebody that teams will ignore once he goes into the league.
The air gets thin out there. The air gets thin.
There's some good shooters in this draft, though. I watched the other day Nick Stauskas and Doug McDermott and Joe Harris and even Adrian Payne, and they were comfortable from the NBA three-point line. They were draining shots. I mean, there's going to be some good shooters in this draft. Aaron Kraft's just not one of them.
Well, you just mentioned probably, if not the top 4 to top 5 that can make that shot from deep.
Yeah, and they can do it. So if you're looking for shooting, this isn't going to be your guy.
What are we seeing here with his form? Let's talk about his form, Jeff.
Well, you know, when you think about a jump shot, I think one of the issues for Aaron Kraft, when you watch that guide hand is supposed to stay directly on the side of the ball and almost be parallel. And when you watch him shoot, his guide hand opens up and his palm is facing his target. That's not the usual way that you're supposed to shoot. Essentially a shot, you know, when you see people work on their shot, it's a one-handed shot, right? But look how much that left hand is involved in his shot. And on the follow-through, see how it opens up and it faces the target. It shouldn't be that way. So the proper skill set and the fundamentals of shooting is something that Aaron Kraft needs to continue to work on. And like you said, Tom, they will go under every single ball screen on the next level until he improves on that aspect of his game.
I had no idea how bad my shooting was until Jay just broke that down.
we knew.
Well, and you know what? We always say guys are going to spend more time. Now, he's not going to be in biomechanical, whatever he was studying, because he's a brilliant student. He would be able to spend more time on his shooting. But guys that really jump up 8-10%, those guys are outliers, I got to think, in the league.
So we're going to have more from the point guards. They go through their spot-up shooting drill, college and the NBA. And one sleeper that I know Chad Ford wants to make us all aware of. That's next, coming back from Chicago. The NBA Draft Combine is on ESPN2 today. Watch these future NBA stars showcase their skills on the hard court in shooting, agility tests, and scrimmages. The NBA Draft Combine today at 1 Eastern on ESPN2. Also live on the Watch ESPN app. We are back here in Chicago, almost an hour into the action, with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams, Andy Katz working the room as well. I'm Ryan Russillo hosting this today. And Chad, Deonte Burton is a player, smaller school, Nevada, put up huge numbers scoring. And as we just got done talking to Jahi Carson at Arizona State, Carson, people more familiar with him because of Arizona State. But Burton maybe more off the radar and someone people should look at a little bit more.
I think they should, because he's got a couple of things going for him. He's got an NBA body. He's an elite athlete. He has a 6'6" wingspan. So the fact that he's 6'1" is mitigated a bit by the fact that he's long. He's an explosive athlete. I think the question about him is he a point guard? Again, that's always a question. One thing about him, his team never won. And when NBA teams look at point guards, one of the things they want to see is that you're a leader and that you help your team win basketball games. And Burton didn't do that the last couple of years at Nevada. Now, some of that is the talent around him, but being in a smaller conference and being as talented as he was, the results on the court weren't that impressive. But as a physical specimen for the NBA, he's got that athleticism, he's got that length, and he can really score the basketball. But he's got to improve that jump shot, and he's got to prove to scouts that he's a point guard. Fred.
Well, I agree with you. I really like this kid. This kid's going to go in the second round. He played 39 minutes a game this year. He scored over 2,000 points at Nevada. And when we say smaller conference, I think really more in terms of exposure, because this is a league that's produced a UNLV guy. San Diego State, New Mexico's got 3 guys here. And I love his competitiveness, and I have a feeling, not that it matters to me as a coach, but I think he's gonna do really well in the athletic testing. He's a very, very good athlete and has got physical strength, I think, to play that spot.
Andy Katz is out there with all the general managers, every team represented every year at the draft combine. Chicago's not going to be in the lottery. They defied odds years ago, getting Derrick Rose. Gar Foreman with our Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So we thought we'd stay local here at the beginning. Gar Foreman, general manager of the Chicago Bulls. You've got 2 picks in the top 20, 16 and 19, and then a second-round pick in 49. What do you need to get out of this draft?
Well, I mean, we always, we're going to draft the best guy available. I don't think we really look for a certain position. Obviously, we're looking for guys that fit the culture that we've created there, guys that are serious, hardworking, defensive-oriented. We're excited about the draft, Andy. I think at the 16 and 19 spots, we're going to get 2 guys that'll fit with us. And this is a great chance to get a look at a lot of these guys.
Now, obviously, Derrick Rose has had injuries. What are the chances you could be looking for a potential point guard, at least just as a backup, to increase that position?
I mean, again, we'll look at all positions. So we don't narrow it down with the draft. I think that's more for free agency as we put our team together. But there is a good point guard group here, and it's a position we'll evaluate.
On day 1 of this combine, when you know a lot of the elite guys are not participating, what are you looking for on the players that you're going to see here throughout the course of today?
Well, as you know, on the court, how do they interact with other guys? How are they taken to coaching? What's their work ethic? But most of these guys we've already evaluated in game situations and practice situations. I think for us, what's more important is later this afternoon when we get a chance to sit down with guys and interview them and get to know a little bit about their background, about their makeup and character. And then, as you know, this weekend, the physicals are a big part of this whole process also. So each step is important, and, but to us this afternoon, probably more important.
So take us inside that afternoon interview. What kinds of questions do you ask to see if you can sort of knock them off their footing a little?
Well, the first question we ask is, what's the best question you've been asked, to see what other people are asking, and we get some interesting answers there. But, I mean, nothing specific. Usually, as you know, it's the first time we get to interact with them one-on-one. A lot of these guys will get back in town into our building where we really get to spend a lot of time. But just get a sense of who they are, what their background is, how they see things both on the court and off the court. And it's really interesting, usually, Andy, and you know this, you can see a lot of their personality after having watched them play for a couple of years, and you sit down with them and it all kind of ties together. You can see their personality when they play, but it's interesting to do that.
Joel Embiid not here. He's got a back issue, so he's not going to do the medical, the physical stuff this weekend. How hard is it for a team that's at the top of the lottery when they don't get that universal medical that happens here in Chicago, and they have to sort of rely, if they can even get it, when he comes to their city?
Well, obviously it's important, to get that information, and I would assume those teams, if he doesn't get a physical here, they'll have him come to their city and get a physical there. But you've got to have that, or it's a big part of making a decision is where they are and make sure they're healthy and there's not going to be any long-term issues.
Thanks, Gar.
Okay, how do you like our weather out here in Chicago?
Did they mess up the calendar? Chicago, it is mid-May, not mid-March. Did you know that?
I know. It was 85 last week. It'll come back as soon as you leave.
That's not fair. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks a lot, Chicago. I appreciate that. Now let's look at the guys who didn't make it here, including almost your host, with the travel problems coming to Chicago. But these guys just all dropped out. Once Wiggins was out, Chad, we knew that it wasn't going to be cool to show up at least and do the drills. They're going to get measured. Wiggins, Parker, Embiid, Randall, not part of this. But I think the most interesting story is Dante Exum. Before I get to you, Chad, on kind of where we're at with this guy from Australia, Fran, you called the Hoop Summit game over a year ago up in Portland, Oregon in 2013, and he was exciting. 16 points. They thought maybe he was going to roll in college. I mean, he really is the real deal here.
Well, and I saw him last summer at the Under-19 World Championships as well. He's not going to turn 19 until July. We're talking about a 6'6" guard who could play the point or the two. Now let's give you a little background. His dad, Cecil Exum, played on the North Carolina National Championship team with Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, and James Worthy. This kid is athletic, he's long, he's sleek. I love everything about him except that he is just a puppy dog. He's going to be playing in the NBA next year and playing a lot of minutes as a 19-year-old young man. So physical maturity and improving his outside shot, which is not broken, by the way. He will be a very good shooter. Physical maturity is the biggest thing between Dante Exum and him being a very good NBA player, Chad.
And you look at his measurements today, 6'6", a 6'9" and 3/4 wingspan, almost a 6'10" wingspan, 196 pounds. He needs to obviously add a little bit of strength there. That is an incredible size for an NBA point guard. He's also an elite athlete. I think he'll test very well athletically. And this is a guy that, had he played college basketball, we would probably be considering him, along with Parker and Wiggins and Embiid, as a potential #1 pick in the draft. And when you look at a team like the Boston Celtics, look at a team like the Los Angeles Lakers and the Orlando Magic, I think these are teams that will consider this young man with the #1 pick in the draft. It's a bit of a risky move because everybody's seen Wiggins and everybody's seen Embiid. That when you talk about a guy who can go create his own shot, who can play both the 1 and the 2 and has the size to excel at both, you look at his pedigree, you look at how good a young man this is, how hard a worker he is. He's really, really an intriguing prospect. It's risky because you haven't seen him play against the other college basketball players, but we did get to see him play against this elite class at the Nike Hoop Summit, and he more than held his own.
We were just an hour into our coverage of the point guards working out behind us. Day 1 of the 2014 NBA Draft Combine with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo, and Andy Katz handling the interviews with the guys from the front offices, the NBA coaching staffs, and some of these prospects, including Dante Exum earlier today.
Dante, every draft there's a bit of an international man of mystery. This year it's you, potentially in the lottery. What do NBA teams not know about you?
Well, it's they know a lot about me. They've watched me over the last year or so. It's just they haven't had, I guess, I haven't had the exposure that I guess these college players have had. So I guess that's kind of the mystery behind me. But they have seen me play.
You did play at least one high-profile game in the States. How much do you think that helped you at least get some familiarity with the game here in the United States and for them to at least see you?
Yeah, the Nike Hoop Summit definitely helped me out. And it was a week-long camp where NBA teams got to see me, and then the game definitely helped my stock at the end of the week.
Patty Mills had a good career at St. Mary's. Now he had sort of go through the hard route, and now he's contributing in the NBA with the Spurs. What do you think you need to do to maybe skip a step here and be a contributor a little bit sooner?
Well, obviously hard work. He coming back in the summer and seeing how hard he's worked and how he's got into the position he is now, I think that's one thing I'm going to have to start to do frequently. So that's one thing I've been working on for the last 2 months, and it's been working out well for me.
If you were to describe your playmaking game, how would you?
It's just to beat my man off the dribble and try and draw the help defense to create for others. I think it's as simple as that.
Thanks, Dante.
Thank you.
Dante Exum, worth repeating, as you said, Fran, 2 weeks after the draft, he'll turn 19. Okay, let's look at the top guys here, because I think this is fascinating. Julius Randle, Kentucky's no longer in play for the #1 pick. Maybe before the season started. Parker's still in play there. Wiggins is, Embiid if healthy. But really, all of them were torn down, the three, Randle, Parker, and Wiggins, because they had the hype going into it. And Exum really benefits by never playing Tom. And I talked to one general manager who said, hey, look, we can't all be this stupid. We think he's good. But still, if he played, maybe there'd be more negative commentary about him in comparison to guys like Parker and Wiggins.
Almost certainly there would be more negative. Look, the top of this draft was ballyhooed as just the best maybe ever going into the season, and then we systematically start picking apart Wiggins and his drive, Parker and his his ability to defend, his footwork, his quickness, Embiid and his health, his ability to translate. When Dante doesn't play, he's just fine, right? He's just fine. In fact, he gets better and better and rises. It's sort of the nature of the beast here because of the human factor here. We look for faults and we look for things that are wrong, and the flow of information now, because of guys like you that tweet it all and cover every little thing.
Wow, slight jabs being thrown.
Wow. The flow of information is just overwhelming, and it's coming in all the time, and usually there's going to be that negative stuff mixed in. So for him, he's been in a bubble, right? And it's, as a decision maker, it's hard to know, and you're taking a risk.
It's interesting. There's a slight advantage for him because of all those things you just mentioned, but also for the fact that he's played in more of an NBA-like system, and that's how they play overseas. There's a lot more spacing. There's a lot more screen and roll opportunities. You know, you don't have as much help side defense like you do in college. When you're running a screen and roll in college, you see three guys with their foot in the paint waiting for you to come into the paint. But also, something on the negative side, how will he deal with the physicality of the NBA? Because that's something that you don't see overseas as well.
Well, I think he's going to have that adjustment because of his age. But Chad mentioned some teams. If you're the Celtics or the Lakers and you're not going to have a chance at the top three, you may be able to get the best player in this draft at 4, 5, or 6. When I say best player, I mean 5 years from now. So he is a man of mystery. But those that have seen him see enough about him that they're almost glad that he's not a guy that has a lot of exposure, because he could slide.
The other interesting thing about this is you look at those guys, they're all different players. They all play different positions. They all do different things. I mean, this is going to be another thing that's going to be interesting for teams. What do you want? Do you want a guy who can go out and get his own shot? Then Exum is the guy, or a point guard. Do you want a guy like Wiggins who's an elite defender right away and has this freakish athleticism? Because if that's the case, then Wiggins is the guy. Jabari's the guy who steps in right away and has the best chance of averaging 18, 20 points a game right now in the NBA. I think he's ready to go in and play right now. And Randle is a beast in the paint and a great rebounder. And then you've got Embiid, and a guy who can not only defend and rebound and block shots, but looks like offensively he could be special as well. None of these guys are competing head-to-head with each other based on skill set or the position that they play, and I think that adds intrigue to who do you take #1. Some of it may come down to what type of player do we need.
We'll do more on all these top guys throughout the 2 days of coverage, where Jabari Parker could possibly go, the question with Embiid and his health, how that changed the top. But another one of the point guard / off guards with this point guard group, Clarkson from Mizzou, coming up next. ESPNU's coverage of the NCAA Division I softball regional starts Friday at 3:30 Eastern. San Diego State battles Michigan. Then at 6, Dartmouth takes on number 9 Arizona State. Then at 11, Boston University taking on number 11 Arizona. The NCAA softball regionals presented by Capital One Friday on ESPNU. All games also live on Watch ESPN. Back here in Chicago at our hangout for the next couple days, Quest Multi-Sport, with Jay Williams, Fran Fraschilla, Chad Ford, and Tom Penn. Andy Katz out there monitoring the point guard group, which is the first to get started this morning. Jordan Clarkson out of Missouri. And Tom, he's somebody who came over from Tulsa. You look at the shooting numbers at Tulsa from 3, shot 37%, 28% this year in Mizzou. You saw a big drop-off. When you look at something like that, does that still keep it a question mark on whether or not somebody can actually shoot?
Raises a huge red flag. I mean, you have to be able to shoot the ball in this league. The defensive scheming in a second will immediately leave the rookie open. They're gonna double team off him. They're gonna leave him. They're gonna go under every screen. So those sorts of shooting numbers and that shooting trend is a big question mark, and it's something that has to be answered. That's when you get into the mechanical breakdown. Sure, he can do this stuff. He can get in the lane. He can finish. And he can post up a little bit. But when you need to space the floor and shoot the ball at that position, there's nothing that'll get you yanked faster than clanging about 2 or 3 open jumpers in a row.
I feel like we've been repeating ourselves a lot today, but it falls in another one of those categories of what is he? Is he a 2 guard that handled the ball a lot? Because it looked like that a lot at Missouri. We see how athletic he is, the isolation plays, Chad. I think he's another one that you can't really figure out which category he's in.
Yeah, he's got size, he's got athleticism, and those are the 2 things that get everybody excited. If he's really a point guard, he averaged 3.8 assists a game. That's a question mark, and his shooting obviously is a big question mark as well. He had such a great start at Missouri, and I think that was part of it. I think scouts were very, very excited about him the first half of the season, talking about him being a first-round pick. He had some personal issues that were going on as well that I think affected his play. He just wasn't as strong in the second half of the season, and now you're left with, well, what is he?
Well, ultimately, as I watched his season unfold, he had trouble getting by quick defenders at the college level, which is going to translate. He had trouble keeping people in front of him. He may make a team. He reminds me of George Hill a little bit. Similar transition from 2 guard to point guard. You know, he'll probably be in the league. Some teams have him late first. Most teams have him early to mid-second.
Well, one guy that we know truly is a point guard. No debate about what slot he falls into. From Syracuse, Tyler Ennis declaring for the draft, and with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And Tyler, when you entered Syracuse, you were not a lock to be a one and done. So at what point during the season did you start to realize that you had done enough to leave for the NBA?
You know, throughout the season, I really didn't pay attention to all the mock drafts and the media, and you know, I just tried to win games for my team pretty much. And with us going undefeated for so long, and you know, being the #1 team in the country, I got the recognition that you know I thought I deserved. And you know, near the end of the season, I had to kind of stay focused on you know, Syracuse and not on the NBA draft. And I just wanted to sit down after the season was over. You know, talk to my parents and my inner circle, and you know, we all believed it was the best decision for me to enter the draft.
You had maybe arguably the shot of the year when you knocked off Pitt with the buzzer beater. What does it take for a player, especially a point guard, to have that ability to want to take and then make that last second shot?
I think the main thing is confidence. I mean, first of all, you got to want to take the shot. A lot of people could score 30 points in that last shot. They don't want to take it. So, you know, growing up, I always wanted to take the last shot, and I knew, you know, I was going to miss a lot of game winners through my life, and I knew it paid off. And you know, the shot at Pitt was kind of an example of that. And you know, being a point guard, I always want the ball in my hands, and I want to be able to either win or lose the game for my team. And you know, having the last second shot is a way to do that. So.
What aspect of your point guard game, whether it's defense or offense, do you think you really need to fine-tune between now and when training camp starts in the fall?
Yeah, I think on the defensive end, I think I'm a lot better than people expect. You know, coming from Syracuse, there's a lot of questions on the defensive end, but I think you know, through workouts and through the draft process, I'll be able to show that you know, I have you know, defense, and you know, I'll just try to improve on my speed and improve on my strength for the next level, and you know, just get ready to go up against the best PGs in the world.
All right, so now here's your chance to wave the Canadian flag. Anthony Bennett, #1 pick last year. There's a chance Andrew Wiggins could be #1 pick. Both Canadian, 2 years in a row, possibly. What is going on in Canada basketball that there's been such an influx of Canadian basketball players into the NBA and into the NBA draft?
I think you know, Canadian kids are just starting to believe in themselves. I mean, you know, in the past when I was growing up, there wasn't many Canadian players in the league, and not many playing on the Division I level. And with such success we've had in the past years, you can see, you know, all the talent and people, you know, starting to believe in Canadian players, and you know, I think it'll only go up from here. So you know, we got to thank the older generation with Tristan Thompson and Corey Joseph, those guys that, you know, were the ones drafted, and then you know, just continue the cycle.
Nick Stauskas told me that he is openly cheering for the other Canadians in the NBA draft. Where do you stand on that to make sure your countrymen get picked high?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the point guard side, there's no other Canadians, so you know, I can cheer for all of them. You know, I know how hard all of them work. I've had a chance to play with most of them, and I know they all deserve it. So, you know, as long as we all get drafted and end up in the right situation, I'll be happy for every one of them.
All right, thank you. And by the way, he's a Maple Leafs fan, not the Montreal Canadiens. Back to you, Ryan.
It'd be a lot better for him if he was. Let's take a look at some of the other point guards coming in. 12 points per game, 5 assists, 2 steals. ACC freshman last 30 season. Ennis falls in that category. Hopefully he has no career that resembles Javaris Crittenden's whatsoever. But Chris Paul, Jay Williams, those are pretty good guys to compare with. And, of course, Kenny Anderson going all the way back to the late 80s.
About time we get a Jay Williams reference on a graphic.
I made them do it.
Not going to be the first slower.
All right, Jay, Will, earn your money now. Come on.
A lot of pressure. I like Tyler Ennis. I think he has the ability to make plays off the most imperative part of the game from the point guard position, which is ball screens, understanding how to read the screen and roll situation. His assist to turnover ratio was off the charts, and he makes reads. He understands if you go under. He struggled a little bit with that shot, but now look, he didn't shoot the ball as well from deep like Trey Burke did when he was at Michigan, or like Trey Burke did this year at Utah. But I think his ability to make reads off those screens are imperative for him on the next level. He knows how to foul the guy if the guy's going to roll. He can deliver a crisp bounce pass. He can give the ball back for a pick and pop situation. And he's a floor general. And I think with his size, he's 6'1" without shoes, but having a 6'7.5" wingspan helps you at the PG position.
Guys, I think he made a brilliant move coming out, because I think his stock will never be higher than it is right now.
It's a great call, Fran.
There are teams that have him in the 20s, in the 20s. And you know what? Give him credit, because all the things you just said about him are things I like, especially the pick and roll acumen, ability to find people. He's got to improve his shooting and his floater game. He's got no floater game at all. But given the fact that some teams like him, and the mock drafts have him high, great move on his part. Now you got to prove, Tyler, that you can stay in the league 10 years.
Now, something I do want to see, because Syracuse plays zone all the time, how will Tyler Ennis do when he's in an isolated situation defensively? Because we've seen some of these guards with Lillard, Kyrie Irving, Trey Burke, some of the top guards in the league, Tony Parker. How will he be able to defend those kind of guards in an isolated sense?
Take a look at the difficulties. Take a look at those defensive struggles. Inability to cover, close out. This is what we do when we evaluate a player. We will break down. We will say to our film guys, show me where he's weak. Break it down. Show me all these possessions. It's immediately accessible. This is what you dissect and how you try to project. But go back to the offensive side of the ball and pick and roll to underscore that. By design and by default, everything ends in pick and roll. By design, because it's so difficult to defend. By default, because a 24-second shot clock, when your first option is covered, your second option is covered, you're going to quickly get into what, Jay? A pick and roll. So you need decisive decision makers, guys with acumen. And we've said, is he a point guard, Chad, with all these other players? Is he a two guard? This is a point guard.
And I think Fran's so right about his stock never being higher, because the thing that stood out when I was watching him in Maui is the incredible poise that he had for a player his age, right? I mean, that was the thing that stood out, is the decision making for a player so young. He's not going to be young as a sophomore or as a junior anymore, right? You expect that decision making to be there. That's what his stock is going on now, is poise for age. And that's why he's considered a late lottery to mid-first round pick.
Well, as Ennis finishes up the backpack drill, he's actually watching the spot-up shooting drill from the rest of the point guards that are out there. And Samaje Christian, somebody for Xavier, guys, 17 a game. And if you look at him his freshman year, didn't show you that outside shooting this past season. Didn't take a lot of threes, but did improve. And another one with a lot of size, trying to sell scouts today on him being a point guard.
Well, he's got the physical ability to be an NBA point guard. There's no question about it. And he was first team All Big East. The dilemma, the red flag that goes up with Samaje, and there's a lot to like about this guy. He made only 19 threes all season, and we're talking college threes, which gets back to our theme this morning with point guards. He shot 38% from the college line, but that's going to be an area of improvement. About 70% of his shots this year, guys, were at the rim in the lane, which is likely not to happen. But you know what? Late first, early second, this kid's athleticism, I think, translates, and you can see it here, guys.
He's got the length, and he's got the athleticism. He didn't really even play point guard at Xavier this year because they had another player on the floor that's playing point guard. So, again, he's another player that can benefit from being out here with the other point guards, because if you scouted him this year, you primarily saw him playing off the ball. He still averaged 4 assists a game playing off the ball. for Xavier this year. I think he's an intriguing prospect because of that length, because of that athleticism, because of that ability to break down a defender off the dribble. That's the one thing he can do.
You know, Chad, too, I would compare his speed with the same likes of Jahi Carson. Both of these guys are jets with the basketball.
And he's bigger.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now his defense was he defended out of convenience, which will change.
So does everybody in the
That's
NBA,
true.
with the exception of LeBron.
But that will change if he gets in the right culture, because he was not a multiple effort guy. Let's put it that way.
True.
But the athleticism is there.
We don't have any defensive drills to worry about, guys. Come on.
Defense. The film doesn't lie.
Worry about that one later. Okay.
The film doesn't lie.
The point guards are finishing up. That means we're going to take you into the shooting guard drills, including a couple guys that have decided to actually work out this morning. So the shooting guards getting ready to go through their workout. Coming up next, live from Chicago, it's the 2014 NBA Draft Combine.
Whoa, yeah!
Combine from Chicago today on ESPN2 for the last 2 hours of coverage. It starts 1 Eastern. Watch these future NBA stars showcase their skills on the hardcourt shooting, agility tests, and scrimmages. Again, the NBA Draft Combine today at 1 on ESPN2. Also live on Watch ESPN. We are seated here inside of Quest Multisport in Chicago with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo, Andy Katz out there. And the shooting guards are getting started. And much like the point guards, we saw to start today, starting with those dribbling, ball handling drills. You know, it's just something to get the guys kind of warmed up once they start getting into some of the other stuff. And one of the names I want to focus in on here, guys, to start with this group of shooting guards is P.J. Hairston. We know how much he could score at North Carolina, 15 a game there, dismissed from the school, and really a lot of stuff that you have to worry about off the court with him. But he absolutely lit up the D-League this year when he was there scoring, and now even is flirting potentially with a back end of the lottery, maybe in the late teens somewhere there, Fran.
Well, one of the things he proved is that he could shoot the NBA three, not the college three. 37% from behind the arc in the D-League. There's no doubt that he helped himself by taking a bad situation and making it better. He's got to get better defensively. Lateral quickness is a little bit of a concern, but we've said this all morning. If you can make shots and stretch a defense at the NBA level, there's value for you. He's got good size, good strength, and that 3 months in the D-League definitely helped him.
Chad, are people scared of him though still?
Well, yeah, he got dismissed from North Carolina. You know, that he's going to have to answer some questions. He was hanging around with the wrong people, got in trouble a couple of times. But they love him as a prototypical wing. He's got the NBA body, he's got the athleticism, he's got the deep range, he's got a scorer's mentality. If he had played at North Carolina this year, not only would North Carolina have been a very, very dangerous basketball team, I think he probably would have been a top 10 pick in this draft. I think when you look at all the intangibles that are there, that's where he was. Gauging him in the D-League, it's tough. It's tough to scout the D-League.
Everybody gets 30, I swear.
Yeah,
every time I look at a guy get sent down.
It's like scouting Rucker Park a bit.
Well, the games are longer.
Yeah.
And there's more possessions, and that's why it's deceiving.
Well, you got to look at efficiency numbers there. I mean, those shooting percentages is what excites you, right? He's shooting the NBA three. You started with that. He's proven to have the range. Look, he's blue chip talent. He's North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky level talent. And he hit a hiccup here in college. This is the pros, guys. It's a professional league now. A number of the factors related to college obviously don't factor in at the pro level. It's all about basketball all the time. So he's been grinding in the D-League too. This is what you want. You want guys, if he's coming off of buses and he's coming off of back-to-backs and having to perform night in, night out. It's this interesting track towards the pro game by not his choice, but ended up not going to college and going through this developmental system.
There is a culture shock between the way the game is played at North Carolina compared to the way the game is played in the NBDL. All right, even with the way North Carolina travels compared to the way they travel in the D-League. I played in the D-League. When you're having 12-hour bus rides and then you're getting out and playing games, it's a tough environment. And I think this kid is going to translate very well to the next level. 6'5", 6'6", has a pure jump shot, very strong. There's some weaknesses on the defensive end, but his basketball IQ is very sharp. He understands spacing, and there's no doubt about it, North Carolina would have been a top 5 team this year if this young man were playing.
Well, we know that McDermott, Stauskas, and those guys that can really shoot the ball, like Adrian Payne, we think they're going to translate to the NBA line, which is further out, and they probably will. This guy's already proven it, but you know what? This is part of the job interview, and even to the point where there's going to be some teams getting their private investigators out to make sure that, you know, they can draft this guy and know that he's going to be a good investment, and he's not going to have some of the same off-the-court difficulties he had at North Carolina.
But sometimes players go through situations like that where that situation humbled P.J. Hairston. It humbled him.
You hope so.
And you hope so, and it kept him hungry. And I think it was the right decision for him to go to the D-League so he paid his dues. He can show that, look, I'm willing to work, and I want to work to become not only a better player, but a better person.
You look at a guy like Lance Stevenson, who dropped into the second round in part because of all those concerns about his off-the-court issues. And was he rough around the edges? Absolutely. The Pacers put in a plan right away to make sure that he had the right sort of support around him, that he would stay out of trouble. He had some early issues there his rookie year, but now you look at what he's delivering for Indiana. They got a steal, maybe the steal of the draft, because he slipped to the second round. And so I think a big thing for the teams is figuring out, if this guy has some issues, how do we provide support from a player personnel standpoint to make sure he stays out of trouble.
Let's get a closer look at these shooting guards. We're going to listen in now with their coach, Mark Madsen, directing them as they work through the ball handling drills and now the shooting stuff.
Zip it. Get the pass there. Get the pass there. Excellent. All the way to the corner. Get to the corner, Nick. Get to the corner, Nick. Drive it hard. Drive it hard. Knock it in. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Next one, guy in the corner to drive in the middle. 2 dribble pull up. Guards coming in. 2-foot floater. Land on 2.
So Mark Madsen directing them as they kind of fill the corner on this 3-man operation behind us. And one of the other guys that's kind of funny when you think about, all right, would you have Nick Johnson work with the points? Would you have him work with the shooting guards? It makes sense that he's with the 2 guards here, even though he is a little undersized, Fran. But, you know, Nick is a tougher evaluation because of that size. But if there's one thing you knew, when Arizona needed to be bailed out, when they needed a bucket, he was their guy throughout the entire year.
Oh, you're exactly right. The thing that teams like about Nick Johnson is a little bit of that versatility, and they love his toughness. It's a defensive-oriented system at Arizona right now. They like the fact that he can defend. You know, he's likely to make a roster as a late first. Again, second-round pick. It's beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. But I think being a pure 2-guard is not his game. It's going to be the guy with some versatility. Proven winner, toughness, athleticism. By the way, we talk about his uncle Dennis, who is a Hall of Famer. His dad, Joey Johnson, is one who played at Arizona State, one of the highest jumping guys I've ever seen in 35 years.
Like legendary.
Legendary. Right. I'm talking about, you name him, his dad could jump with anybody.
Nick Johnson needs to get into the NBA by being an athletic wing defender, right? We always talk about get in where you fit in. Nick Johnson shouldn't come into the NBA with expectations that he's going to drop 15, 20 points a game. We were still seeing him work on that deep range jump shot, but he's extremely athletic. He has different shots around the rim. He can finish over the top of you as well. But one of his strong attributes is his ability to defend the wing position, and I think that's where he's going to really have to find his way on the next level. I think he's one of those guys that could have benefited by coming back to school, just because I think Arizona would have been loaded next year, and I think he would have showed a little bit more of his versatility.
Well, the thing, you know, he's 22, Jay, so he's probably thinking the clock is running. But, Tom, you know this. All you're doing when you're looking at a guy who was a college star, and now he needs to find a job in the league as a find one thing he's good at.
I tell you, as a wing defender in the NBA, you know, this is Kawhi Leonard. You got to be long and rangy and big, unless you're just going to D up point guards. The size differential, fellas, is so significant. If you're going to be a versatile wing, think of Nicholas Batum in Portland, who's 6'9" with like a 7-foot wingspan. That's what it takes out there. You know, Bruce Bowen, our colleague at ESPN, was, as I can remember, the best player who could change the game purely by guarding on the wing. And Bruce is what, 6'6" and with rangy and long and wiry. That's what you need out there. So, Jay, I understand what you're saying. It's just my alarm bells start going off when you just see his physical size and stature at that position.
He a little bit reminds me of Dante Jones defensively.
Dante,
I think
6'6".
That's who he kind of has to be.
6'8" wingspan, you know.
He can shoot the ball a tad bit better.
This is the amazing thing about these guys, as I mentioned. You know, this changes everything when they've been playing AA baseball.
Yep.
And now they got to skip AAA and get to the major leagues. And this kid had a really good career for Sean Miller, and he's going to be fighting for his life in the league. And that's say that this is the profession you've chosen.
As we've broken down Nick Johnson and those measurements, we actually have those from earlier today as an important part of the process, probably better than the drills, really, to learn, okay, we know he might be short, but is there some hidden wingspan in there for some of these guys? There's actually a stat, Tom, that I want to get to from you coming up next, because when you look at superstars in the NBA, one of the paths is that long wingspan. So we're going to go and look at some of those measurements from earlier today. Shabazz Napier from UConn. You know, height-wise, it's not going to be what you want. We're working out with the staff. This is a big part of these 2 days here, live from Chicago, the NBA Combine.
And how we don't talk about him, the dude is top 5 in scoring points in NCAA history.
He's going to play in the NBA for a long time. He knows how to play.
Here's McDermott. He wants the three.
Oh, yeah. This guy, he's a pro. He can really shoot it.
He's as skilled a player at his position as anybody coming out of college basketball.
Welcome back to the 2014 NBA Draft Combine here on the west side of Chicago at the Quest Multisport. Now, pleasure to be joined by a Cat's Corner regular here, Doug McDermott. And I've got my bobblehead still from you. Thank you for that. All right, let's go back to the season where you were the consensus Wooden Award favorite. You held it from beginning to the end. What was that like to deal with that on a week-by-week basis and the focus on you constantly?
You know, it really wasn't a distraction for me just because our team was so caught up in the season. You know, it was definitely cool seeing my name in the running, you know, throughout the season, but something I didn't really pay attention to be honest.
Put in perspective, finishing in the top 5 all-time in Division I scoring, what does that mean to you?
You know, it means a lot. You know, during the season, I really didn't realize how cool it was, but now that I'm all done with it, it's pretty cool looking back, and I'm sure I'll continue to reflect on it as I get older.
A year ago, you did consider entering the NBA draft, but not for long. What did you think you really needed to work on during your senior season?
You know, I just didn't think I was mature enough, you know, emotionally, mentally, and physically. So I went back and I improved my game, and you know, I feel like I'm in a much better place now.
What do you think you need to show when you get to those individual team workouts? Because they know you can shoot, so that's a given. What else do you need to prove?
I think I need to be able to show them that I can put it on the floor, you know, ball handling, creating shots for others, and also be able to guard, you know, a 3 or 2. So that's something I'm really working on, something I'm confident I can do, and I'm really looking forward to showing that.
How are you working on being able to show that you can guard a 3 or a 2?
Well, I mean, in workouts, we have plenty of guys that I've been going up against. You know, Nick Stauskas from Michigan, Sean Kilpatrick, Joe Harris, certain guys like that. So they've been really good to go against every day.
Now you're leaving Chicago on Friday or Saturday morning. Why?
Friday night, going back to graduation at Creighton. So I'm really looking forward to that.
What's it been like to have the entire town, I mean, Omaha, Creighton, the fan base, following basically every move? I mean, you've already dealt with sort of being the star and being, you know, dealing with your sort of local paparazzi in terms of preparing you for the NBA lifestyle.
Oh, it's been great. You know, Omaha's been such a great city for me and, you know, our team. So, you know, I'm happy to go back this weekend, but, you know, it's just such a great 4 years for me. And, you know, I'm always going to remember the memories in Omaha.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Andy.
Back to you, Ryan.
Doug McDermott finishing up an unbelievable career at Creighton, listed at 6'8", 225, shot at over 40% for 3 every single season he was there, 45% this last year, Chad. But if you look at him in the eyes of NBA decision makers, how high can he actually go on draft night?
Well, you know, he does one thing that's an NBA skill all the way, which is he can really shoot the basketball. He's got a picture-perfect release, and I think that was the thing when he went and played with Team USA this summer that they were so impressed with, is his ability to shoot the basketball at his size. Will he be able to score other ways offensively? Yeah, I think he gives some matchup problems for people. If you're going to guard him with a 3, he can go post up people down low. He's really talented that way. I don't know who he defends. at the next level. I just don't think he defends threes or fours. So does his offensive prowess overshadow the fact that he can't guard his position, either position, at the next level. But for a team like, let's say, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who want to make the playoffs next year and have a hole at the three and absolutely need perimeter shooting and a guy who can step in and play right now, he could go as high as number 9, number 10 in the draft from one of those teams that wants to make the leap to the playoffs. But he's not the typical upside guy that you're normally thinking about in the lottery. So I think he goes somewhere between 9 and 20.
If I'm coaching Doug McDermott, I'm looking for him to be a very good second unit power forward, maybe sometimes three-man. So you ask yourself, Tom, who does he guard on second units in the league? And I've got a list. Anthony Bennett, Mike Scott, Teletovich, Brandon Bass, Zeller, Scola, Jordan Hill, John Henson. I can go on, and I can tell you that he can guard most of those guys for 18 minutes a night. What you're getting out of him as a second unit scorer is a guy that I would predict next year will get 30 3 or 4 different times in the league. Because as Chad said, and we all know, this guy is one of the elite shooters and scorers to ever play college basketball. Just take a look at him right here. Now, can he post up Zach Randolph? Of course not. Can he post up some of those guys I mentioned on the second unit? Absolutely. But then you have to guard him out here. And this is where I think he's going to become problematic many nights in the league as a guy that's going to play 18 to 20 minutes a night. Think about this, guys. Those 30 guys we talked about last year that were first-round picks, only 4 of them got any meaningful minutes in the playoffs. This kid is a skilled player with an elite skill.
Take more of a look at Doug McDermott once he gets out there and actually is working out with the drills. We're looking at the shooting guards going on behind us right now, and we've already touched on a few of them. One that we wanted to kind of break down here a little bit, C.J. Wilcox out of Washington. An off guard, loves to shoot. Some of the times you look at it and you go, okay, is he forcing the issue a little bit? Sometimes that's just a young thing. I'm always wondering, Jay, when you start to play with some of these guys, how do you coach them or how do you work with them as a teammate to kind of calm them down a little bit when they've been so aggressive and given the green light high school and college?
Well, first off, I think the reality starts to kind of seep in where you start to see the athleticism of some of the guys you're going to be playing against on the next level. And yes, now they are going against the upper echelon of college players, but once you are able to get to the NBA level, if you're fortunate enough to get there, you start to see how much taller, how much quicker guys are than what they actually seem like on TV. And just to revisit back one other point, we talk a lot about, what guys can defend certain positions. There's a ton of guys in the NBA, guys that can't guard anybody, by the way. Okay, so
amen to that.
You find ways to get around that. But as it relates to C.J. Wilcox, I like his talent. I like his sides. I think he's going to be one of those guys that has to outwork people and show that his game will continue to evolve, Fran.
Well, he's a great kid, Chad, and he's older. He's going to be 24 in December. That doesn't help him. But he does have the one NBA skill you love, and he shoots it from deep. He's got positional size, Tom, which you guys always like. So you take the one great skill, the positional size, and you may have a rotation guy. And you know what? Quality kid as well. I've gotten to do his games through the years. Solid guy. Redshirted as a freshman behind Terrence Ross and Isaiah Thomas. Has made himself into a guy I think can make a roster and be a good rotation.
And he's a good athlete on top of that. A lot of times when you think about the shooters, you think about guys who have no athletic skill, right? I mean, one of the interesting things in this draft is that several of the best shooters in this draft are actually very good athletes as well. And Wilcox is a good athlete. He's an NBA athlete. He's not an elite athlete, but he's good enough. And when you think about him in the late first round, and you're a playoff team, and you need a guy who's cheap, who can shoot the basketball, and that's all you're going to ask him to do is come off the bench and shoot a little bit. C.J. Wilcox has that experience. I think he could play right now 10, 15 minutes a night, shoot the three. That's all you're asking him to do. And for a lot of these guys, it's will you accept your role in the NBA, right? That's not what you did in college. You had a green light. You could do a lot of things. Now you're going to go to the NBA, and they're going to ask you to do a very specific thing at the next level. Does he have the personality to be able to accept that's what I am as an NBA player? And I actually think this young man does.
How do you compare him to the others who have come through this program? I mean, there's just this backcourt pipeline coming through this program.
We're starting with Brandon Roy, certainly, and then the guys I mentioned, Terrence Ross. Those guys, I think, are more athletic. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas is a specialist. I mean, who knew the last pick in the draft to be such a good player. But you know what I like about him? He redshirted as a freshman, not because of academics, but because he wanted to get stronger. He was behind some really good players, so he accepted his role coming in. Now, the problem is on the backside, he'll be 24. But if you need a guy for 18 minutes a night, a Danny Green guy, Chad, stand in that corner, that's what you got.
Look at that 6'9" wingspan. I mean, that's great for a position.
Right, it's almost at 6'10", and he didn't measure with shoes, which is always the height that we want to go by. But Tom, we were talking last night as we were getting ready for these 2 days here at the Combine in Chicago. That wingspan number really can be I don't know if it's a precursor to sometimes. I'm not saying C.J. Wilcox is going to be a superstar, but it seems to be a common theme, isn't it?
Of all the measurements, of all the things you look at physically, that differential between height and wingspan is critically important, is proven over time. I mean, the elite players in the league have incredibly abnormally long arms. You know that by default you should have the same wingspan as you do your height. And you see all here are the longest players fingertip to fingertip here in this camp. But for the shooting guards, you look across all positions, that's a key measurable, that's a key differentiator. Why? So you can space guys defensively. You can get in there and bother them. You play horizontally, you play on angles diagonally. You can go to that vertical reach when you get to the bigger players. I mean, you take up more space in every direction if you have long arms.
Hey, Chad, I wanted to revisit something that you said earlier. Now, I couldn't think it couldn't be more imperative for a kid like C.J. Wilcox to get into the NBA. You said understanding who you are on the next level. Right? We compared him to Danny Green. Danny Green was a slasher and a defender when he came out of college, right? That's how he got his foot in the door. And then all of a sudden, his shooting game expanded. So once you're able to get your foot in the door, you could blossom into something different, but it's about being able to get by that first hump.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's a guy that will get a look in the 20s by virtually every team, because shooting is always something that you can use, and especially a guy that's going to come in and understand what are good shots and what are not good shots.
One of my favorite parts of these 2 days is all the text messages everybody will get from agents saying, you haven't talked about my guy enough. C.J. Wilcox people should be very happy. Chad already has that list. Okay, coming up next, we're actually going to hear from, really, I don't know if it's arguable, but perhaps the best shooter in this entire draft class, Nick Stauskas, next from Chicago.
Nick Stauskas, this young man has done everything and more.
He's been able to attack the rim. He's a tremendous player, one of the premier players in the nation. Stauskas drains the three. Tell me there's no place for him in the NBA. Are you kidding? There's always a place for a shooter.
ESPNU baseball tonight. Friday, we've got ESPNU's coverage of baseball this week. Tonight at 7, it's a wild card game between the 8th-ranked Gamecocks and number 9 Vanderbilt. Then Friday at 8, number 14 Ole Miss battles Texas A&M. College baseball tonight on Friday on ESPNU. Also live on Watch ESPN. Andy Katz with Nick Stauskas.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And Nick, certainly as we saw, blowing kisses to the Michigan State crowd, a little bit certainly exuberant in that moment. Take me back this season where Trey Burke leaves and that leadership mantle was passed to you. What did you need to do with this Michigan basketball team to get back to the level that you guys were a year ago and playing for the national championship?
You know, really it all started for me in the offseason with my work in the weight room. I really improved my body, my strength and conditioning, and that just really helped me throughout the season, just getting more confident going to the rim. And, Coach Beilein gave me a lot of confidence. He put the ball in my hands, and he let me do what I do.
When you were recruited to go to Michigan, there's no way you thought in 2 years you'd be in the NBA. So how did this happen?
Just a lot of hard work. And, although no one believed it, I did. In my mind, I always believed I could be in this position. So
in 2 years?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I always believed it could happen. And, the fact that people doubted me always, drove me to work harder and get to this point. So the fact that I'm here now, I'm excited, and I'm just trying to make the most of it.
What's the key to being such a prolific shooter?
A lot of practice. There's really no other way to explain it. Just from an early age, I put in a lot of hours to get to this point, and it's all about repetitions.
You told me this morning that even if you have a bit of a funky style, you still have to sort of stick with it and, sort of make your mark through consistency. How did you do it?
When I was younger, my shot was horrible. My form, at least, was horrible. And, for me, it didn't matter. I just kept shooting, and, eventually you'll learn how to get that form right. It's all about practice.
So everyone knows you can shoot, so that's not a question. what do you need to prove to the NBA personnel to make sure you're a high selection?
Well, I think teams are starting to figure out that I can really put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. I think I still want to show that a little bit more, but I think I just need to show it. I need to show that I can defend at the next level. You know, if I can really lock down to their two guards at the next level, I feel like teams are going to really like that.
And Canada, as we asked Tyler Ennis, is certainly having a banner couple of years. You told me this morning you're watching what everyone else is doing. How do you explain what has happened with Canadian basketball?
No, it's crazy that, you know, everyone that's coming up right now out of that Toronto area, we all grew up playing with or against each other, and I'm really proud of everyone. You know, we, like I said, we grew up playing with each other, and to see everyone get to this point after working so hard, it's really amazing. I'm rooting for everyone moving forward.
Appreciate it, Nick.
All right, thank you very much.
And once again, Ryan, Leafs, not Canadians, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Back to you, Ryan.
Seems really passionate about that either way. Let's look at the measurables here for Nick Stauskas. Height with shoes, great number for him playing that off-guard position, over 6.5. The wingspan, not bad there. Somebody was talking to me a little bit earlier about the body mass index, maybe a little high, but it's not really that big of a deal, especially once guys start working out for NBA teams. But, Jay, we saw big improvement from freshman to sophomore year. What makes him so excited?
Well, he's been able to do things off the bounce. I think I added another dimension to his game. And you talk about this player's shot, 53% from the two-point range and then 45% from the three-point range. And he has an innate ability to move without the basketball. You're going to see him in the upper left-hand corner of the screen here. And as we let the play develop, I want you to see how he's able to go into a dribble handoff. And his ability, due to the defense not really recognizing that the handoff is about to happen, to release so quickly. Look how he gathers himself. You see that there's miscommunication between Keith Appling, and the other defensive player. And that's 0.7 seconds he took to get that shot off.
Right, and he set him up perfect on the back cut, too.
Walks him down, brings him right to the dribble handoff. Now against Nebraska, once again in the corner, but this is one of the improved aspects of his game. You're going to see him involved in the ball screen. Now, the defender does a great job of getting over the top of the ball screen, but watch the next move. It's a spin move. He's somewhat off balance, but his ability to gather himself that quickly, set his feet up, and knock down another mid-range jump shot, and then making reads off ball screens once again, taking his time, changing speeds. You're going to see Jordan Morgan actually roll to the basket, changing speeds, keeps it a defender right there on his hip. But look at this step back. The step back is pushing off his right foot instead of his left foot. These are the kind of skills that he brings to the table. And when you have a guy that can shoot the ball that well and now has the confidence to do things with the dribble, it's a scary combination.
We've been watching a lot of tape, you and I, separately, because what impressed me about Nick Stauskas, guys, I've never seen a guy be able to step back and create separation off both feet.
Exactly.
I talked to the staff this week at Michigan, and they said he never had a bad practice in 2 years. He's a gym rat. And how about this? He made 36 of 37 threes a few weeks ago in a minute 24. This guy might be the best shooter in the draft. Maybe it's Doug McDermott. But I love him because he's going to continue to get better, because he's a basketball junkie. By the way, almost 4 assists a game as well. That's pretty good.
Eyes on the rim. How about that? Boom, I'm going to score. I am going to score the ball. He is a hungry, hungry scorer, which is a little unusual with his age and his makeup, but I love it.
I love him because Doug McDermott, great set shooter. Nick Stauskas' ability to shoot off the dribble and shoot it as accurately as he's able to off the dribble. And I'll say the other interesting thing about this, there are a number of NBA teams that have watched him carefully and think that he can play some point guard at the next level. They think his handle is very tight. I watched him in drills the other day. Very tight handle. This is a guy that if you can project him to even play some point at that size and his ability to shoot the basketball, he's a top 10 pick in this draft. I still think he's top 15. And speaking of guys that can shoot, Joe Harris, who we're watching right now, I saw him in that same workout. I mean, here's another guy who can just really, really let it fly.
Yeah, Joe Harris is interesting because when you look at him at UVA, 4 years, you know that he's just versatile, kind of plug him in everywhere. If you went back and just watched him off that Duke game last season, you'd think he was a lottery pick. That's certainly not where he's projected. He's a second-round guy. But is there enough there, Jay, that you think that he can stay on a roster? Because that's really what we're talking about in the second round.
He's strong. He's a hard-nosed defender. His basketball IQ is very high. He's been involved in a ton of systematic plays this year. That's what Tony Bennett likes to run with their system. But you know what you're going to get with him every night. You know that he has good range. He can knock down the mid-range jump shot as well. And he's a guy who understands where to be at the right time frame. And I think that says a lot about him as a player.
I honestly think if you talk to Tony Bennett, he would tell you that the system in some ways hurt Joe Harris over the course of his career because it was equal opportunity. You see the numbers, they're pedestrian, except when you really drill down, he's been a career 40% shooter, Chad. And again, if you're looking for a guy to do one thing extremely well, and also, by the way, be at practice early, stay late, and he's competed at a high level in college, this is a guy.
And he defends.
Yep.
And, on top of that, he was a very good defender. And I think that's another thing that is a feather in his cap. You just worry a little bit about him when you look at it. He's got a great body. He's physically strong, but he's a little bit stiff. You look at his hips, he's a little bit stiff. His ability to guard laterally twos, I think he's probably a little bit better fit as a 3 in the NBA, but he's a little bit undersized for that position. But he can hit shots, and everything that you said, I think, makes him a really good second-round pick. Again, maybe a guy that sneaks into the late first as well because of his experience.
Yeah, Harris, very rarely do you see somebody the leading scorer as a junior, then the next year they play less minutes as a senior and score less, take less shots, but that's the system, as Fran mentioned, that they ran down at UVA. Somebody he went up against, Joe Harris did, P.J. Harrison now going through the shooting part of this, 25 shots from the college range, 5 different positions, and they're going to back it back out to the NBA range.
Look, I'm all about effort, right? And I understand that P.J. Harrison is a really good shooter. Right? I think one of the things that, GMs and you see scouts, what they look for is the way you attack some of these drills. And it just kind of seems like P.J. Harrison's just shooting the ball, not really holding the follow through, not getting great lift. But when he is engaged, when he's not running from spot to spot, he's kind of walking, a little bit nonchalant of a
kind of walking
mentality. But when he is engaged and he is getting great lift and he's shooting the ball with conviction, he's a very talented player. But that's a mindset you need to pay attention to too now.
Well, you hope he's going to figure it out, because this is how he defended at the D-League level, by the way, right here with this effort.
It's a rule.
Yeah. So now when you get to Phoenix and Jeff Hornacek says, I need you to play harder than you're playing, do you make the face or do you react and say, okay, coach, I got it? Because that's what he's going to be up against. Can he make himself valuable on both ends of the floor to an NBA team?
Looking at some of the NBA numbers from the shooting drill that we just saw, not great, but again, it's just one drill going through it. Looking back, though, North Carolina history, most threes made in a season, number 2 behind Shamon Williams. I think I still have a Shamon Williams jersey, Jay, if you're interested in that. P.J. Harrison at 89. Reggie Bullock, somebody we saw work out last year. And P.J. we know can score. We know the numbers. Something, Tom, you mentioned, the efficiency. You have to look at the efficiency numbers more than the overall numbers coming from the D-League. But with that size, with that shooting, definitely somebody that should go. It'd be a shock if he's not taken in the first round.
Where you got him, Chad?
Yeah, I think he's late lottery to mid-first round. I think some of these background questions are going to have to be answered, and teams are going to have to be comfortable with him. But I see him on a team like the Chicago Bulls, for example. I think that would be a great fit for him, and a guy who I think could come in and play right away for Chicago and give them some perimeter shooting in the backcourt. I think that'd be a great fit.
As the shooting guards continue to work out behind us, we are hanging out live in Chicago at Quest Multi-Sport for the 2014 NBA Combine. Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo, your group here at the main desk. Andy Katz out there working the room, getting us interviews with players, coaches, and general managers. Let's check out Roy Devin Marble out of Iowa. This is somebody that's actually kind of exciting. You look at that Tennessee game in the tournament. He was somebody that Iowa definitely had to rely on, kind of bail us out, get us some buckets. They weren't able to win that game as Tennessee moved on and got themselves a few tournament wins. But as a shooting guard, he fits more into that mold than some of the other guys who are trying to figure out whether or not they're 1s or 2s.
You know, one thing about Devin Marble, which is a skill at the NBA level, is he can create his own shot. Tom talked earlier about the time and score situations, late clock, ball goes in your hands. If there's no pick and roll, can you get a shot? This guy can do that. Now, his shooting percentages were not great, 34% from 3. But over the course of 4 years, he's athletic. He's got positional size. You hope the shooting can improve somewhat, but he can go get his own when he needs to.
I think a lot of it is due to the system that Iowa played. They played such a fast-paced system, and I think that's where you saw Roy Devin Marble really excel in transition. He can get that shot off. He has a strong upper body. He can attack the rim. Can he defend? We always talk about can he really defend, but I think he could be a serviceable NBA player.
And he's played a lot of point guard at Iowa. Not as much this year, but in his career he played point, so he's comfortable with the ball in his hands. Bloodlines are good, by the way. You know, Gene's got to mean something. His dad, Roy Marble, obviously an outstanding player in the 80s for the Hawkeyes.
I got to imagine when you're talking about defense, though, unless it screams at you, screams at you that you can't play defense, then I'm sure a lot of teams go, all right, whatever, we'll figure him out. We'll get him in here. We'll get him in the team system. I mean, unless somebody's just tripping over their own feet on some kind of switch, right?
You draft for offense. You look at offense first. You're going to get into the projections on defense. Look, that's all. You need somebody with baseline athleticism, foot speed, and then it's all about willingness to defend. So when Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the Chicago Bulls, who's sitting right down there on the baseline, is evaluating somebody, he's saying, does that guy have the fundamental foot speed, athleticism to be able to do what we demand here in Chicago to guard? So back to P.J. Hairston being a good fit in Chicago, my brain went right to him sitting, Tom Thibodeau sitting right there next to Gar Forman, the GM. They're talking about this crop of players. And good on P.J. Hairston for showing up and showing off. It's his chance to impress a guy like Thibodeau.
Andy Katz with Fran McCaffrey, the Iowa head coach, and Devin Marble's guy.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, you guys were just talking about Roy Devin Marble, and obviously Fran McCaffrey knows him very well. What aspects of his game do you think translate well to the NBA?
He can play a number of different positions, and I think particularly the point guard position at his size. That's something that's excited a lot of NBA people. He can score the ball. He's a very underrated defender. Tough kid, a great late game player, but incredibly cerebral. So I think when you put it all together, he's going to be in the league for a long time.
What is his Achilles heel? Something that he really needs to work on to maybe squash some of the doubting?
You know, I think offensively he's a terrific scorer. He's got a great mid-range game. I think they're going to want him to see him make that NBA three consistently. He became a really good college three-point shooter. I think they're going to want to see that. But his mid-range pull-up game is as good as it gets. His floater, his ability to get to the rim at 6'7".
I want to ask you how your son's doing, Pat McCaffrey, battling cancer. How is he doing right now?
Much better. Two surgeries went well. He's got some more treatment coming. Spirits are great. The outpouring of support, obviously what you did, we can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Fran, and give him our best.
Appreciate it, Andy. Thank you.
Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks a lot. Andy Katz, Fran McCaffrey, the Iowa head coach. We will continue to watch the shooting guards work out. Coming up next, we have the big guys as well. Continue the coverage live from Chicago, the NBA Combine. A little bit earlier today as we are going through the drills. This is from this morning, and the guys went through the measurements. Really the more important part than the drills, the body fat percentage test, which is always fun to do. Get the true height and weight. Also that height with shoes is what the NBA goes by. And when you see your favorite player listed, it's with shoes. Wingspan may be more important than anything, especially when you're looking at some of the wing players and projecting them as defenders. We are inside Quest Multisport in Chicago, and with those measurements from earlier today, James Young from Kentucky, who's not going through the drills, considered a really good shooter. We're going to talk about him a little bit more and some of the guys that did not make it to Chicago for these 2 days. Jordan McRae, though, from Tennessee, somebody that actually with that 6'6" size, that off-guard position, he's in the shooting guard group right now, right there with James Young at 84 inches of wingspan. So let's take a closer look, guys, at McRae, a couple Tennessee guys in attendance for these 2 days. Where does he fit in with some of the other guys that we've already talked about out of the two guards?
Well, he's a scorer. You know, he's not a great outside shooter. He's got a, to me, I watched him on tape. He's got a flying elbow, but he averaged 18 points a game. He reminds me a little bit of Marshawn Brooks, who played at Providence a couple of years ago, in that he can go get his own shot as well. A lot of things I think he's got to work on. He's got to get stronger. He's an older senior, but most of his scoring was 17 feet and in, which makes it important for him to continue to work on the deep ball.
Where does he look projected-wise, Chad?
He's a second-round pick. A lot like Lamar Patterson and like Marble. These are guys who obviously had great college careers, finished their careers strong. There's not that one thing that you can point to with any of these players that says, okay, at this next level, this is the thing that they do and excel. This is the niche that they fit into. but they're all around good players. And I will say that 7-foot wingspan is going to make a difference for someone like McCray, because that is freakishly long for a 2 guard, and we saw James Young there as well. I think that's gonna help as well. But he's 23 years old, and there's not a lot of upside there. These are the type of guys that you love in college, but it's going to take the right fit, the right system, the right opportunity for them to make it in the NBA.
And you notice most of his stuff on the highlights is to the rim stuff, which he's probably not going to get as much of at the NBA level. So the outside shooting is going to have to improve. But he's got a gift for putting the ball in the basket, which he did well at Tennessee.
You know, watching him in some of these one-on-one closeouts, he's having a very difficult time driving by defenders who are stronger than him. And I think he's going to see that a ton on the next level. And something else to notice as we watch some of these drills, it was really bothersome for me to watch some of these shooting drills beforehand. And I alluded to it before, Tom. Like, when you come into this NBA pre-draft combine, how could you not come into this combine being in the best possible shape, understanding that every single drill you do, I want to go at these drills like they're game speed. The scouts and GMs pay attention to how you attack the everyday drill, because that's the way it will translate into the game.
You'd be surprised how quickly these guys can get out of shape. It's not unusual at all to bring someone in for a workout and you realize they're not in any kind of peak condition whatsoever. When they lose the structure of their college program, how disciplined are they? This is a professional league. You got to be a pro. You have to have self-discipline. You have to regulate what you do, where you eat, how late do you stay up. Do you prepare? And Jay, it shows. They'll reveal themselves through this process. I'm not saying this happened in one specific incident, but in general, we talk about it too, and it comes down to your evaluation for sure.
And some of this has to do with the agents, right? Agents will prepare you for this process. They'll prepare you by putting you through the drills. They already know what the drills are going to be, practicing those drills.
Or if that's Joe Abunazar or Tim Grover or guys like that.
Exactly, right? They'll get you with the right trainer. I was talking to Adrian Payne the other day. He was talking about the fact that they'd met with a nutritionist. He ate a lot of fried food in college. I think a lot of young guys do. He was moaning a little bit about the fact that he's having to eat grilled chicken and grilled fish, and it tastes terrible to him because that's not how he's eaten his whole life. But that's the sort of stuff that gets you in the right shape to be in this combine, right? It's not only just about exercise, it's also about the eating habits that you have. You get a good agent who's going to prepare you in all those ways. They also have media handlers that teach them how to do the interviews and how to answer certain questions and how to answer difficult questions that are coming up in the past. I'm always shocked. Some of these guys come in, they're so prepared for this process, and others guys come in deer in the headlights and they're shocked at everything that they're being asked to do and what they're being put through. And some of that is on their agents to prepare them for this, as you pointed out, Fran, a job interview.
And let's go back to the college coach, for example. I often say, was a guy coached hard in college? So you take an Adrian Payne, for example, and you look at Tom Izzo, and you look at guys like Draymond Green, Morris Peterson, Allen Anderson right now, Jason Richardson played 11 years in the league. And what did you get from your college coach that's going to translate not only to the job interview process, but then when you do make a roster? Have you been coached hard? And so some of these guys have, and some guys, quite frankly, have been coddled, and it shows.
Good numbers from McCray on the college portion of the spot-up shooting drill, actually 19 of 25. But it's one of those things, like if a guy had a bad run through the drill, you don't want to sit there and say, okay, hey, he really tricked us, he's not a good shooter. And on the other side, you don't want to say, hey, he's really, really improved his shooting because he went through the drill. I think it's the difference between how you look from the college three and the NBA three. Somebody that looked great outside. Maybe the numbers weren't there for James Young from Kentucky, who's not going through the drills, but everybody expects him to be one of the better shooters in this draft class, and he caught up with Andy Katz. Taking a look.
James, you guys had a remarkable NCAA tournament run, getting down to the last couple minutes against UConn. How hard was it to sort of look back at what could have been in those last couple minutes in the national title game?
It was really hard. You know, we came a long way, and for us to make it to the national championship, it was good. We're just a couple minutes short of came in what we came here to do, and it was very tough for us. We just didn't come up to a nice start, and if we would have had a nice start, I feel like we would have won.
The Harrison twins decided to stay. Willie Cauley-Stein, Alex Poitras decided to stay. You and Julius decided to go. Why did you decide after 1 year it was time and you were ready to go to the NBA?
Just after the season I had, I felt like I was ready for it. They taught me a lot of stuff about the NBA, and I felt like I was just really ready for it. And it just came down to me and my dad talking, and he said, if you really wanted to do this, and it was up to you. So everything was just up to me, and I felt like I was ready for the NBA.
When you get to those team workouts in those NBA cities, what do you think you need to prove to those NBA personnel to make sure you're a high selection, especially in the lottery?
Just to show I do a lot of ball handling. That's what they said one of my weaknesses is. So that's what I've been working on for the past summer, and just get my ball handling good.
Thanks, James.
And thank you.
Break down James Young's projections a little bit later in the show and start talking about some of the guys at the top end of their rankings positionally. We still have a long way to go. 5 hours of coverage today from Chicago. Quest Multisport. A cloudy day outside and full of hopes inside the gym. ESPN News coverage of the NCAA Division I softball regional starts Friday at 3:30. San Diego State battling Michigan. Then at 6, Dartmouth takes on number 9 Arizona State, and at 11, Boston University faces number 11 Arizona. The NCAA softball regionals presented by Capital One Friday on ESPNU. All games also live on Watch ESPN. As the shooting guards finish up their workout today, day 1 of the NBA Combine in Chicago, P.J. Hairston went through the shooting drills and looks like he was working with a trainer, may have cramped up, who knows. It doesn't look real serious. It looks like maybe his part of today could be done. So the shooting guard's still going. And one of the guys that we did want to focus in on, guys, is Jordan Adams, another one of these early entrants from UCLA. And I'll just start with Chad on this. When I watch all these guys, whether it's Kyle Anderson, who we're going to see later working out with the bigs, even though sometimes he ran their offense, Zach LaVine, who we saw working out with the point guards who didn't play. Like, this is a really odd group to kind of figure out when you think about the way they played at UCLA and where they're projected to be positionally in the NBA.
Yeah, Jordan Adams, he's 6'4", 6'5", but he's 220. He's a tank, right? He's an incredible scorer, and that's the thing that NBA teams are obviously intrigued with, his ability to score the basketball. He has the mentality of a scorer. Every time he steps on the floor, he's looking for a shot. He improved his three-point shooting this year. It's still not where it needs to be, but it was better than it's been in the past. I think he improved his shot selection a bit this year as well for Jordan Adams. And the steals are interesting, because he really racks up the steals, but when you watch him play, you wonder about the lateral foot speed to be able to guard anybody in the NBA. He picked up a lot of steals at UCLA, but doesn't really always pass the eye test as a guy that's going to be a terrific defender at the next level.
When you talk about Jordan Adams, and you notice, Tom, you're talking about athletes and basketball players at the NBA level. This guy's a basketball player. The more I watched him on film, Chad, couldn't agree with you more. I love his feel for the game for a guy who is a scorer. He had the 7th best steal rate in college basketball. By the way, even better than Aaron Kraft. He passes the ball willingly, and I think he's going to be a great NBA shooter from behind the arc. I talked to members of the former UCLA staff this week, and they said Muhammad, Anderson, Jordan Adams, from day one, they felt that this kid might be the best pro. He's got a little bit of Wesley Matthews in him to me. Yeah. He's got he's got that big butt, Jay, like you used to have.
Whoa! Sit my phone right on there.
But I think he's a basketball player that's going to have to adjust a little bit on the athletic side. But he knows how to play, and he can put the ball in the basket. That means something.
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time getting over that last comment.
We get the big butt graphic.
Maybe get a full shot.
Maybe that's a new measurement, right? That's a new measurement at the NBA.
Hey, bad visual.
Girls like it. Anyway, one of the things I did want to say, you talk about the fact he weighed 225 pounds, and we question his lateral speed. I think he could stand to lose some weight.
Oh, yeah.
I think as we see that, I think you'll see his lateral speed increase.
There's a little bit of a spare tire there.
Yes. Wait, you said I had a spare tire? Is this where this whole thing is going?
I just got to keep you humble.
Wow.
Adams going through his college portion of the spot-up shooting, 17 to 25. And, Jay, you were looking at it a little bit earlier. P.J. Hairston going through the motions a little bit. Anybody out here that you're seeing really getting up a lather, working hard?
I saw Lamar Patterson. But I think that comes a little bit more ingrained with his DNA, because he's been a kid that has always had to outwork his opponent. He's been a little bit hindered athletically, so he's had to make up for that lack of athletic ability with his work ethic. But those are things that people look for. I think those are things that most definitely translate to the next level, especially if some GMs are questioning what your status is. Okay, is he a guard? Is he a two guard? Is he a swing forward? Is he going to be mid first round? So I think that can elevate your performance and your level where you get drafted.
I think if you're a guy that's trying to make an NBA roster, Tom, the last thing a coach wants is a guy with no energy as your 10th, 11th, 12th man.
Kiss of death.
Yeah, it's a kiss of death. And Lamar, you see Harrison jogging off, or jogging back on, I should say. And Lamar Patterson, I think, fits into this mold of guys that we think are either going to be second-round picks or maybe not even drafted. But no surprise to me if he makes a team, because, again, he comes out of a DNA at Pittsburgh where they have a great work ethic. And you just want a guy that's going to make everybody better every day in practice until he learns the NBA game.
Patterson was a well-rounded guy, 17 a game for Pitt, a 4-year guy, a Pennsylvania kid, get you some assists, gets you some rebounds, but I think it starts with him, Chad, shooting. If he's going to shoot the ball well enough, that'll keep him on a roster. If he can't consistently knock it down, even though he shot 38% this past season for Pitt, then he's going to have a problem.
It's every year it's the same thing. We look at these prospects and say, if they could just do this, then they'd be great. And then there's holes everywhere. And Patterson's another guy where you look at him and then say, what's the one thing that he does that immediately translates at the next level? And other than toughness and playing hard and being a tough-nosed type of player, which I think he is, and that system produces those type of players, it's hard to get your arms around what that is. And I just think that this particular position in the draft this year isn't as strong as some of the other positions in the draft. So we're talking about guys now who, could they make a team? Absolutely, I could see Lamar Patterson making a team. But he's not someone that anybody's really looking at right now and getting super excited about his NBA prospects.
I love the way you keep underscoring, and it's right, that one definable NBA skill, that differentiator, because it's true. You have to bring something to the table right away. Guys, if you go watch a D-League game, a D-League game is completely populated with this type of player, these swing players, the two guards, they're not big enough to be good point guards. They're not small enough to be the right shooting guard. I mean, they just don't quite fit, so that's where they end up, and they got to do something to separate themselves.
Looking at P.J. Hairston a little bit earlier, just moments ago, he's back out on the court. We saw him leave with a trainer, so we just want to update you on his health. We actually have some measurements in from the entire group. Now, some of the guys decided not to be measured in some of the areas, body fat, so I guess a lot of vain guys, the body fat percentage, a lot of guys just would not be tested there on that one. Anyone want to take a guess at the longest wingspan out of the entire, not just the shooting guards, the entire group?
I'm going to say one of the youngest guys in this draft, Noah Vonleh.
I'll say Jordan Adams.
You go Jordan Adams? Anybody?
It's Vonleh. Got like a 7'4" wingspan.
Yeah, the entire draft. Oh, okay. I just said in this group.
That's why. All right. That's what I was looking at.
Are we talking about guys that aren't here?
Yeah.
In Europe?
No.
Okay, because I got one in Europe, but I'll save that for June.
We're making this far more complicated than we need.
I'll say Vonleh.
All right. Isaiah Austin out of Baylor, a 7'4" wingspan, which is not a surprise at all. I mean, he's all arms and knees anyway. Biggest guy overall, Johnny O'Brien, weighing in about 260 pounds. Tallest, Jordan Kuczynski, Arizona State, 7'1". Also, the shortest, his teammate, J.E. Carson.
But look at the difference there. Vonleh measures 6'8" without shoes and has a 7'4" wingspan. Ike Austin measures, what, 7'1"?
7'1", yeah.
With a 7'4" wingspan. It's the freaky proportions of someone like a Vonleh that get guys really excited.
Isaiah Austin is somebody that's flirted with the draft now for a couple years, so he's coming out. He's a center, power forward. Didn't test the height with shoes. Height without shoes, wow, 6'11.5". That is really tall when you think about that size. And going over this the last few years, 220 pounds, which actually might be a little heavier than people would think watching him.
Does that mean he didn't have shoes? I mean, no, I'm not. Do not measure me in shoes. I don't understand that.
No, that doesn't really. I don't know that I can.
Forgot his shoes. How does this not work?
There's a lot of them on this list that I just got from the NBA without shoes this year. I don't know if they just showed up in bare feet, maybe.
Probably the first an agent pulled him out of that test, and then everybody.
But you just add.
My favorite thing every year is the short guy that's 5'10" without shoes and then somehow 6'1".
Yeah.
You're like, what are you wearing?
His agent's like,
yeah,
here he goes.
It's called lips.
Yeah, an inch and a half. That's the standard deviation between a barefoot and shoes. So add an inch and a half, and that's what your NBA playing.
Interesting thing about Isaiah Austin, we may cover him later. No right eye, prosthetic right eye, and he's that'll be at least a question with teams. More importantly, will be the body type and whether that translates to the NBA. But a great kid who had 2 good years at Baylor.
You know, I find with the smaller guards, I'm not as concerned with your height. I'm more concerned with your athletic ability and your quickness and your ability to shoot the basketball and make plays. I think we're seeing the league transition to such a fast-paced league where it's so up and down that just because you might be 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot like a Shabazz Napier, if your IQ is high, if your shooting ability is good, you'll find a way to fit in.
And Tom, we know that this league has just gone smaller and smaller. Some of these stretch fours, beast fours, I know you like to call them, that play power forward in this league that maybe wouldn't even be drafted 10 years ago. I'm wondering if that smaller league also means just more room for some of the guards that would struggle to even be drafted in the past.
Well, it's not unusual to see 3 guards on the floor and to junk it up and to play that way, and then we see it in the playoffs even working.
The Clippers did it just last week.
Yeah, Doc Rivers admitted he hadn't played that lineup all year, but it just worked. So get back to what you just said, Jay, which is dead on. It's about your athleticism, your quickness, your ability to get by guys and then convert and make shots. You can't hand check anymore. We always hear that. You can't hand check and redirect that dribbler. So if you have the burst and the quickness to explode past people, and then the moxie to know when and how to do it, which is half of the battle, that's what you see in more of the live action that you see in a live workout in your gym, where you see that competitive factor go up when guys get after it physically. Here it's a little bit more going through the motions, lollygagging, drills and whatnot. You see that fire when you go live.
Well, Ryan, we talked about this too. We talked about Golden State last year when they had Jared Jack, Klay Thompson, and Stephen Curry on the floor. That's probably the best lineup.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And I think the coaching is so sophisticated now in the league that, okay, Andre Miller posts up DJ Augustine, or Westbrook posts up Collison, but the way defenses
or
are
Durant
now,
posts up Chris Paul. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Sorry, not yet.
But you know, the way defenses are now, more sophisticated than ever. You trap the ball out of the post, and you adjust for your weaker defenders, be they big or small.
I just don't know that mentality is seeped into draft yet. I mean, when you go to James Young and look at that 7-foot wingspan, and then he's 6'7" as a 2 guard, that's what everybody's going to be talking about tonight in the hotel. Don't really worry about their size.
Brad Stevens, once at Butler, now with the Celtics. A challenging year, but they're looking to turn things around in the lottery. He's with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. All right, Brad, how would you describe your first year as an NBA head coach?
Learned a lot. You know, obviously we didn't have a year that you want to have, and but progressed in some ways from a development standpoint, and feel like, you know, we can continue to move forward and get better. Obviously, this is a part of that with the upcoming draft, and then the development of our current players, obviously.
A year ago, you were still the Butler head coach. You didn't know you'd be the Celtics head coach. You've had players come through here, Matt Howard, Shelvin Mack. Now that you are taking it from this perspective as an NBA head coach, what are you trying to look for here on the floor?
Well, you know, obviously this is just a small part of it, right? Our scouting staff has done work all year. We're just watching how they work, how they interact. Some things technically, they're doing a little bit of competitive stuff, but this isn't the end-all be-all. But at the same time, you know, you might see a thing or two that can pique your interest.
You've got 2 picks in the top 20, a lottery pick you'll find out on Tuesday night, and number 17. What do you need to get out of this draft?
Well, you know, I think just good basketball players. You know, positional needs aside, I think it's more important to get guys that can play the game with the right athleticism, but also really have a skill set about them that allow them to be effective at this level. And you know, certain things really translate, other things don't. You know, it's going to be important, these 2 picks for us.
What about in terms of the interview process that I know is going to go on this weekend? And then, of course, when the players come up to Waltham, what do you need to learn from them when you actually sit down and talk to them? Similar a little bit to recruiting.
Yeah, the difference is that, you know, they have to choose you more in recruiting. And I think that, well, you're just trying to learn more about them. You know, you're trying to learn what makes them tick, how they think about the game. You know, all the things that you would want to know in an interview for any organization or business. And I think that you know, it's a big part of it, certainly, and that's the part that I probably am enjoying the most this week so far.
What do you think you need to improve on the most next year?
Well, I've got a long list of things I got to improve on. So, you know, like I said, it was a great learning experience for me this year, and you know, hopefully we'll be a lot better.
A lot of college coaches are always bandied about it the spring. No one has taken the bait yet of moving on to the next level. Kevin Ollie, certainly name is out there. He wins the national championship. Why stay in college when that opportunity is out there for the NBA?
Each situation, each person is different. You know, people have asked me to give career advice, and I don't think I'm qualified to give career advice because everybody has a different scenario, different situation, different aspirations, and so you know, it's hard for me to say one way or another. Obviously, I had a great job where I was. I have a great job now. I'm very fortunate to have it.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Back to you, Brian.
Take a look at the Celtics offseason snapshot. This is still a roster without any cap space, and it's just kind of a lot of bodies. So now when you think about where they could potentially go, Chad, I know they have just a 10% chance of winning the lottery. It's about getting in the top 3. Do you have any sense of what they would do, considering everything's kind of a need for them?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think one thing I'll say about Danny Ainge is I think he's been one of the best drafters in the league. He's a GM that really goes out and scouts a lot. He's at every game that I can think of. He's a guy that's out there doing that. He has a great feel for analytics, and that's always been a big part about what the Celtics do as well. I just think he has an elite eye for talent. I think Joel Embiid, if his back is everything that we hope that it will be, that it'll be healthy. I think that's probably their #1 guy. I really think they like Dante Exum a lot as well. And if they slip a little bit further, one guy that I know Danny Ainge has been high on all year is Aaron Gordon out of Arizona, and brings that energy and that athleticism and that defense to the table.
Rajon Rondo, what do they do with Rondo?
What do you do?
The clock is ticking, and he's the big free agent piece. So if they want to get significantly different, look to move Rondo. They could move him for multiple pieces. They also have the flexibility to get to some cap room by waiving contracts that aren't guaranteed. So they could get to about $10 million in space if they want to. Danny Ainge, last time the way he built this team, he got a lot of young assets. Al Jefferson, all these draft picks that actually didn't pan out for him. They weren't special players for him. Packaged them all together, traded for Ray Allen, traded for Kevin Garnett, and boom, championship level team. So we'll see how they remake this Celtics team. This offseason is critical, but it starts with Rondo. What happens with him?
If there's one thing we know, Ainge has security there in comparison to some other GMs. Other GMs may want to take a Parker and say, let me get production right away. I can't risk it with Wiggins. Ainge doesn't have to worry about that with his success in Boston. So the shooting guards are finishing up here in Chicago, day 1 of the Combine. We have the small forwards, and this is a really interesting group. We're also going to get you interviews from some of the top stars in this class. A lot of lottery picks out of the small forwards. That's next here in Chicago. ESPN News coverage of college baseball continues this week. Tonight at 7:30, it's a wild card game between the 8th-ranked Gamecocks and number 9 Vanderbilt, Matt Bushman's team. Then Friday at 8, number 14 Ole Miss battles Texas A&M. College baseball tonight and Friday on ESPNU, also live on Watch ESPN. We are halfway through day 1 of the NBA Combine in Chicago. The small forwards have just taken the floor, and it's just so funny, guys, because you watch the players that aren't participating in the drills. They're here for team interviews, here for measurements, so all the names are here, and you just see this look in their eye. You see the look from an Aaron Gordon from Arizona going, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to work out because that's what I'm being advised to do. And then someone like Anthony Early, who's only shown up in bald everywhere he's gone, leaving Wichita State as a senior. We're going to start with him, Chad. He looks like he could be a first rounder.
Talk about a guy who helps himself in the NCAA tournament. Doing what he did against Kentucky, where he's being guarded by guys that are considered NBA first rounders, by guys that are going to be NBA players. He looked like the prototypical small forward, 6'8", can really shoot the basketball, athletic, can go inside, can go outside. He's one guy who I think, other than Napier, came into this tournament and moved from a second-round prospect firmly into the first round. He's a little bit older. That's going to hurt him a little bit. But I think that he was a guy who convinced NBA teams that he could come in and be an NBA 3. And I think he's got to continue that momentum in workouts But if he plays anything like he played in that game against Kentucky, he's an exciting player.
And that's what we call recency bias. What have you recently seen from the guy? And that performance against Kentucky was fabulous. The thing about him is he's an outstanding shooter, both from mid-range and deep. Shoots 84% from the line. But 23 years old, average athlete. His lateral quickness is average, doesn't really go left. And the one thing that's one thing that would scare me. At the Kevin Durant camp last summer, he measured in shoes 6'7". So give him credit. He had a phenomenal 2 years at Wichita State, and he's fighting for an NBA job right now. It is not a given.
I would love to be 23 years old again.
Not on draft night.
Not on draft night, but obviously there's some things that can hinder somebody from taking a guy like Lee Anthony early. But when I look at all the positives, I think they outweigh the negatives. This young man has been a constant outside shooter. He's a constant threat from the perimeter. He's attacked the rim with purpose every time I've seen him play. And he's been the rock for his team every single game. And I also, you have to take into account the mentality of a player. This whole year we've been talking about is this team worthy of being a #1 seed, or are they good enough? And he has constantly stepped up to the table and answered the call every single night, regardless of whatever conference he played in. That light switch has not turned off one time.
He was the 2-time D3 JUCO Player of the Year, so we knew coming into Wichita State there was a bit more of a resume after not having it out of high school. You're right, he is 23, 31-7 against Kentucky, but it's something to monitor there, Fran. Like, am I really excited about him just because of the Kentucky game and not looking at the competition that he went through Wichita State? The shooting guards just finished up a moment ago. P.J. Hairston is one of the top names among that group. He's with our Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Here with P.J. Hairston, who spent the part of the season with the Texas Legends in the NBA Developmental League, and obviously that was not the plan. You were supposed to be playing at North Carolina. What was that like at the beginning of the year when you were going through this process of not knowing whether or not you were going to be eligible?
I mean, at that point, that was probably the most time when I was anxious because I wanted to play so bad. And, I mean, just sitting there, I just had to cheer on my teammates, and I tried to be the biggest cheerleader and still be the greatest teammate on the bench. But I mean, it was the hardest time, but at the same time, I learned from it, and now I'm here.
What'd you learn from it?
I learned that, the past is the past. I made mistakes, and I have to learn and move past them and be able to work on my future.
Reggie Bullock decided to come out. You decided to come back not knowing that you wouldn't be able to play. When you look back at that decision, though, was it the right one?
Yes, because, honestly, I believe that we can win a national championship, and that was my main reason for coming back. I wanted to be able to lead my team and be the leader, captain, whatever, the voice of the team, and just be able to lead them to a national championship and to be very, very successful.
So the scouts and personnel directors here, they didn't get a chance to see you at North Carolina. They had to work to see you. What do you need now to show that maybe you would have shown if you played for North Carolina?
Of course, they know I can shoot the ball, but I want to show other things as far as like mid-range, and my ball handling has improved a lot, and able just to finish in traffic, because that was one of the main things that I was told that I need to work on, finishing in traffic and being able to shoot in mid-range. But those are the main things that I worked on before the draft combine and before I got here. So I've improved on those a lot.
So you walked off the court. What's your status of your foot here?
Oh, I just have turf toe. I'll be fine. It's nothing really major. I've had it since high school, basically. So it's nothing I can't deal with.
Some of these elite players, they're not even here. Some of them, they've obviously got to, they go a different path. You had to go a little bit of a harder way to get to this point to be in the NBA draft. How much has that changed you?
Like you said, those guys were elite players in college, and I had to choose another route. Playing in the D League was great. I really improved there, and it helped me get ready for the next level because playing against guys that have been in the NBA, even veterans are playing in the D League, so it wasn't like I was playing against young guys. I was teammates with Melvin Eli, and he gave me a lot of advice about, what the process was like and what I'd be going through and the questions they would ask. So, it helped a lot being on the team with guys that have played and that have been through the process.
Thank you, PJ.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ryan.
Hey, thanks a lot. So P.J. Hairston threw his drills a little bit earlier. The shooting guard group, though, not as impressive, I would say, as the small forwards. A bunch of potential first-rounders. Jeremy Grant, one of them, next. Who wants to watch some first-rounders work out? Small forwards, this is a deep group. A lot of these guys deciding to go through the drills today. Day 1 of the NBA Combine here in Chicago. And of these names, we just saw Clay Anthony a little bit earlier, guys, and with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Jay Williams, and Fran Fraschilla, Ryan Russillo. A bunch of names we want to get to. Let's focus in now on Jeremy Grant from Syracuse. A 6'9" kid, a lot of size, a lot of athleticism, maybe still a little bit raw, but I think physically he jumps out at you, Jay, when you watch him. Within a couple minutes, you notice that he's a little bit different of the level of an athlete.
Well, there were times watching him play this year at Syracuse where his athleticism just absolutely shocked me. And also his ability to start knocking down the mid-range jump shot and some of the things he was able to do off the dribble. His wingspan also made him a really good perimeter defense. Now, you can question that by saying that Syracuse played that zone. But that wingspan is something I think is going to be very difficult to find, that combined with his athletic ability.
And it's interesting because we've been worried about his projection to the small forward, where he doesn't really have a small forward's game. But his measurements today are going to offer up some opportunities for him. He measured with a 7'2" and 3/4 wingspan, but more importantly with an 8'11" standing reach. That is higher than Julius Randle. That is higher than many of the other power forwards that are in this draft. And when you start to think about him then as a power forward that could maybe I think he's got the frame to be able to put on some weight at the NBA level. Now you think about him as a rebounder and as a shot blocker, and they're not asking him to go out and shoot NBA threes, which I don't think he can do. Now you start to think about maybe this is a guy who we were worried was undersized for his position, so therefore he had to make the transition to the three. Now I think you can make a credible case based off these measurements that he could be an NBA 4, and then that starts to open up things for him, I think, at the next level, because I think that's a better fit for him.
As I said in chat, think about how you can utilize him in a pick-and-pop scenario as well, because he can knock down the mid-range jump shot. Plus, he's displayed the skill set of taking bigger opponents off the dribble.
Well, he's probably one of the 3 or 4 most athletic guys in the draft, and he's young. He's the right age. The thing that really jumped out at me, that worried me when I watched him on tape and then I checked the numbers, he wasn't even in the top 400 in offensive rebounding or defensive rebounding rates. And I know he's got a good motor, and I know he's really athletic, so that would concern me. Now, my question, Tom, if you were getting me as the coach of your team and you're going to draft him, I've got to ask you, okay, how do we play this guy, and how long are we willing to wait for, as Chad said, put on the 25, 30 pounds to be that second unit power forward, not even a starter? That would be my question to the general manager.
Well, can I really get you as a coach? Is it possible?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
I got 2 more years left.
All right. Let's get that deal done. Look, he's got this motor. And what the question mark that concerns me is the production didn't follow the motor, right? I mean,
but guys, you can also say the production, rebounding, offensively and defensively was a byproduct of them playing zone now too.
And other big guys.
Tendency to start staying around and being a little bit lethargic when you play their zone. That's why we saw Tyler Ennis get beat a couple times as well.
Yeah. So that would be the question mark. Great answer. This is exactly the dialogue that goes on when you're talking about assessing a player. Then you get to, does he have that fast twitch hum about him? And he does. He's got the quick feet. He's got the liveliness, if you will, and that's what you as the coach want from your bench in your practices. Is you want that lively energy. They always say bring energy. If you can do it, we're there. Now speak of a great prospect. How about Rodney Hood?
Rodney Hood of Duke getting ready to work out with some of the small forwards, and we've seen these two guys go up against each other. And there's Jeremy Grant finishing up around the rim, and you would see a lot of this, as you guys are all mentioning, with those measurables, though. Maybe a better fit at that power forward, at least sneaking some minutes there from him instead of asking him to handle the basketball and hit shots from the outside, because this is what you saw when you look at Grant breakdown from this entire year.
Jay made a great point, Ryan. He was very good in pick and roll with Ennis, and that mid-range shot actually got better. Now, he was 0 for 5 from 3 this year, so we know that's not his strength.
That's a good sign. Means he's not taking it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know what? I think he does have to turn himself into a high-energy guy that can come in and give you those 18 minutes a night and maybe eventually play the power forward spot and just be a solid guy, because the athleticism is off the charts.
Rodney Hood, a different player, same group. Now he transferred over from Mississippi State, sat out the year, lit it up from Duke. And I think at the beginning of the year, Jay, people really started talking to him potentially as a top 10 pick. Late lottery at the worst. I don't know if he's still there. It's not dramatically different, but he did hit 42% from the outside and has a lot of size if you're going to go ahead and sneak him at the 2 guard, because you could probably do that as well.
I think it'd be interesting to watch how he translates to the NBA, because on the collegiate level, when you sit there and you watch Rodney Hood, first off, his game is silky smooth. He's a lefty, which can throw you off a little bit defensively. He has step backs in his game. He has unlimited range. But you didn't see anybody in the collegiate level force him to the right and stay in that scouting report, like stay on that game plan. And I kept saying that throughout the year, and then I started to think, well, maybe Rodney Hood just can beat you going left every time anyway.
Yep.
You see a lot of players able to do that. I think that will be a challenge for him on the next level, finishing at the rim with his right hand. But there's no doubt about it. He has the range, he has the mid-range game, and he has the defense as well. I think to be a really good NBA player.
You know, I would say, Jay, the defense I worry about a little bit. I watched him on tape, and I thought he did struggle at times there. But we love the guys that are in the top 8 spots, and then we like the guys from 9 to 20. And I think with Rodney Hood, you got the outside shooting and the positional size, which a team is going to have to then decide that's who we like. But I think he does got to get a little tougher and be a little bit more mindful of where he is position-wise defensively, because you know that Duke team was not good defensively this year.
But here's what I will say. Just because you're drafted in the top 15 in this draft or top 20 doesn't mean you're going to be a starter. I don't think Rodney Hood is going to be guarding guys like Kevin Durant or LeBron James or Joe Johnson. He could be a guy that can come off the bench and give you some production in that role.
A lot of it comes down to what position do you see him at. Here he's like an attacking 2 guard. He looks more like a 2 than he does 3, fellas. And if he's a 2, he's a lot bigger in the NBA game. You see a post-up game. He's got a well-rounded offensive game, can stretch the floor and shoot it. And he played in a big shadow this year. That Jabari Parker, the shadow on him, and then he didn't get the oxygen, but he made big shots for them when they needed it too.
Another one of the small forwards out there, another example of kind of that recent history, whether it's Cleanthony Early or Shabazz Napier. Well, how about Napier's teammate, DeAndre Daniels of UConn? And this reminds me a little bit of the Kemba Walker, Jeremy Lamb thing, Chad, where Jeremy Lamb was supposed to be something, didn't really happen, and then put it together and was a big part of that championship run. DeAndre Daniels wasn't somebody we really ever talked about as a projected lottery, projected first-round pick, but he did such a great job in the tournament, a lot of size for the position, and immediately was on everybody's radar when we left Fort Worth.
Yeah, and he was a tease for 2 years. I think that was part of it. You go and scout him, and you look at him, and you want to like him, right? You look at the length, and you look at the athleticism and some of the skill set. You want to like him, but he doesn't really produce. But this year at UConn, it wasn't just in the tournament. He had a very good junior season. It just was highlighted with what he did in the tournament. And again, you look at size for position. You look at his ability to shoot the basketball. He's a good enough athlete to be in the league. Is he going to be a star? I don't think anybody's projecting him to be a star. He's a bubble first rounder, probably leaning towards second round pick, but right there on the bubble. But a guy that, you know, is intriguing and a bit of a late bloomer.
I think what teams will see in him, and this is where you have to make the evaluation, Kevin Ollie did a masterful job of playing him at power forward, which means the guys he was driving by were slower. When they put a small guy on him, he was able to score inside. So you love his production at the college level, and now you ask yourself as an NBA GM or coach, if I put him on the floor, where's the best position for him?
One of the things I wondered watching him closely, and I got to see a few of their games in person, Fran, when the possession always ends with you, I believe he had 17 assists total on the season.
Yeah.
How hard is that to kind of get through to the guy that, all right, I understood that at UConn, especially with a front line that didn't score, but now in the NBA, like, you have to be a little bit more active in what we're trying to do.
Well, it's going to totally change his game, because to Kevin Ollie's credit, he put DeAndre Daniels in situations where he isolated him against bigger, slower guys. So I would say don't pass the ball if you're going to the rim. And by the way, he was really effective, Jay, from behind the arc. He was a mismatch nightmare. So he's going to have to be a little bit more of a distributor. But he's a perfect example of a guy that took advantage of his college career based on where they played him.
And let's call it what it is. He played with 2 guards who dominated the ball. Shabazz Napier and Ryan Boatwright. So there weren't too many. When he caught the ball, he was put in a position to score the ball. Yep. That was his priority.
We are in day one as we watch the small forwards behind us. Chicago. Here is the NBA Combine, which is 2 days of coverage, and we're going to get ready to go over to ESPN2 in just a little bit. So with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams, Ryan Russillo. Something we wanted to clean up from a little bit earlier. We were looking at all the measurements that we had, and one of those measurements was height with shoes, which is what everybody goes by. It's what everybody's listed at. So when you actually look at your favorite NBA player on ESPN.com or wherever, and you see that height is actually with shoes. And we had a bunch of zeros, and we were wondering, did guys just show up without shoes? Apparently there was a data problem, so those measurements were taken. They were taken with shoes, so we'll have all those heights for you as soon as we can. So we don't have to worry about any footwear issues.
Guys are still wearing shoes and willing to get measured. Thank God.
So that'll do it for us here on ESPNU. Our coverage will start again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern for the first 3 hours. Some more of the measurements coming in. We're going to head over to ESPN2 coming up right now. A lot more to come on ESPN2 with 2 more hours of coverage, including finishing up the workouts with the small forwards. And more importantly, we got some power forwards and centers that are actually going to join the group together, including Patrick Young of Florida. That's next.